Chapter 12:20. What a powerful energy. To think that the Hyderabad mountains would be hiding such a terrifying energy. This is simply inconceivable. Wang Chong was stunned by the ripples of energy coming from the ground. These spatial ripples made him think back to when Kateba had cut open space with his sword. He sensed that this energy was connected to another mysterious space-time. And the energy he felt before him was probably only a tiny portion of the energy that leaked out from that world. At this moment, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, many thoughts flitting through it. Wang Chong suddenly recalled some distant memories. When that calamity erupted, if he remembered correctly, the otherworldly invaders had crossed over from 3 different places. One of them, Wang Chong clearly remembered, was near Sindhu and not far from the Hyderabad mountains. But it had been too long, and Wang Chong had never been to Sindhu before, so there were many things that he could not confirm, making it impossible for him to deduce. If that legend was true, could it be that the spatial door was not somewhere else, but in the Hyderabad mountains? But why would this energy appear beneath the Hyderabad mountains? And what connection did it have with the otherworldly invaders? Wang Chong stood motionless in a daze. After some time, Wang Chong suddenly had the centipede monster fly toward a place where the energy was concentrated. Wang Chong could sense that this energy was the closest to him. Stop! Without any warning, an elderly and deep voice resounded in Wang Chong's mind, imbued with extreme solemnity and warning. Wang Chong was greatly surprised by this voice. Who is it? This place was more than 1,500 meters below the surface, and the surroundings were pitch black and devoid of air. It was simply impossible for anyone to reach this place. Hurry and stop. Young man, that's not a place you should touch. The voice continued, sounding extremely solemn. Buzz! Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong sent out a vast wave of psychic energy that spread to every corner of his surroundings. But even with his supreme psychic energy abilities, Wang Chong had not discovered anything. This was simply unbelievable. High Priest! Wang Chong blurted out. No one could surpass Wang Chong in the field of psychic energy, and now, this person had projected himself into his mind without Wang Chong noticing. In all of Sindhu, Wang Chong could only think of one high priest. Other than him, there was no one else who could do this. When the words high priest left his mouth, there was a moment of silence in the underground world. But very quickly, the voice sounded again. Young man, hurry and leave that place. That place is not for anyone to touch. After a few moments of thought, Wang Chong glanced in the direction of that tide of energy and immediately began to ascend. Although this person had never stated his identity, Wang Chong's previous silence was enough to tell the truth. High Priest, this junior is the young Marquis of the Tang Dynasty Wang Chong. I request an audience. Several dozen zhang from the bottom of the Hyderabad mountain range, Wang Chong suddenly stopped. Using his mind energy, a thought swept out in all directions like a wave, attempting to send the news out in this way. Although he had failed to find the high priest's true body, Wang Chong had not come up empty-handed. After analyzing the situation, Wang Chong had a rough idea of where the high priest was, but he still had not been able to pinpoint his exact location. Wang Chong stood motionless as he waited for the high priest's answer. His surroundings were quiet, and all was darkness. Everything was unknown in this underground region. Wang Chong quietly stood there, awaiting the high priest's answer. There were no ripples in the surroundings. The entire world seemed to have stopped. It seemed like only a moment, but also like countless moments. Finally, Wang Chong heard a long sigh. Ha! The voice from before spoke once more. This long sigh was suffused with boundless meaning. Wang Chong had never sensed such complex emotions from a person's sigh. At this moment, Wang Chong felt like he was looking at a person's entire life. Come. I know you've been looking for me. The voice disappeared immediately after it finished speaking. However, in just a moment a faint candlelight suddenly appeared in Wang Chong's senses. The faint aura was not very strong, but it gave off a feeling that no matter how far away it was, this aura would not be weakened at all. Finally found it. Wang Chong was overjoyed. He immediately controlled the centipede monster and headed towards the faint aura. There's a crack in the rock to your right. Come in from there. Just a few zhang away from the bottom of the Hyderabad mountain range, the high priest's voice sounded again. Wang Chong looked carefully, and indeed found a crack that was as wide as a person. Wang Chong took a deep breath, and left the centipede monster's body. He quickly entered the crack in the rock. The crack looked narrow from the outside, but once he entered, it became much wider. It's a natural underground passageway, Wang Chong thought to himself. Like a leopard, he swiftly moved about in the cave. The walls of the cave were winding, but it was very wide. Wang Chong followed it and quickly climbed up. About 10 minutes later, Wang Chong had climbed 700 to 800 meters. Even Wang Chong was secretly surprised by the length and depth of the crack. Just as Wang Chong was wondering how deep the crack was, the high priest's voice suddenly sounded again. "We're here. Come in." Wang Chong raised his head and finally saw a huge metal door in front of him. There was a luminous pearl embedded in the top of the metal door, emitting a faint light. Wang Chong was about to push the door open and enter when he suddenly saw a strange scratch on the metal door. His heart skipped a beat, and he immediately stopped. These are words. Using the dim light of the luminous pearl above the metal door, Wang Chong carefully examined it and discovered that the words were different from any of the modern languages. These words looked extremely ancient. Congratulations, host. You have discovered ancient Harappa words from over 3,000 years ago. Host is rewarded with 100 points of destiny energy. At this moment, the Stone of Destiny's voice suddenly rang out in Wang Chong's mind. Ancient Harappa? Hearing the voice in his mind, Wang Chong's body trembled, his heart filled with shock. He had never thought that this seemingly unremarkable iron door would be engraved with such ancient characters. Stone of Destiny. Attempt to use the riddle of destiny to translate the words on the metal door. Wang Chong's heart thumped, and he immediately spoke without hesitation. Request denied. Host's level is not high enough, and there is not enough information. Unable to translate. At almost the same time, the Stone of Destiny's voice rang out in his mind. Still not enough? Wang Chong sighed inwardly and could only give up. Bang! A moment later, Wang Chong pushed open the metal door and stepped inside. Wang Chong had imagined all sorts of scenarios in which he would meet with the Sin the High Priest, and he had also imagined what sort of scene lay behind this metal door. But he had never imagined that this would be a dead end. Behind the metal door was the same pitch-black and filthy cave wall, its surface uneven and craggy. Other than Wang Chong, there was nothing else in the room. There weren't even any furniture or chairs. It seemed like a trap. High Priest. Wang Chong probed. But all was quiet, and the high priest's voice came to a sudden halt. Wang Chong called out several times, and immediately sensed that something was wrong. When he had left the body of the centipede monster, he had taken in a full breath of air, but climbing up and opening his mouth several times had consumed most of the air in his lungs. Without enough air, not even an imperial great general like Wang Chong could survive 700 or 800 meters underground for long. Wang Chong's breathing slowly became ragged, and he felt like he was about to suffocate. Just when Wang Chong felt that something was wrong, and was about to give up and turn to leave, a voice rang out in his ear. Endure a little longer. Wang Chong was still in a daze, not understanding what the Sin the High Priest was saying. In the next moment, the mountain rocks and powder above their heads rustled, and countless pieces of gravel and dust fell down. At this moment, the mountain began to tremble. Huh! A gust of air blew in from right above Wang Chong's head. Sensing this fresh air, Wang Chong immediately took in a deep breath, his mind reeling in shock. He was currently extremely deep into the ground. If not for the centipede monster, not even an imperial great general would have been able to get here. Yet the Sin the High Priest had been able to instantly guide the air through the cracks in the mountain. This was a terrifying ability. Many thanks. No matter how slow Wang Chong was, he could tell that this was the High Priest's doing. If the High Priest wanted him dead, there was no need to go through so much trouble. You shouldn't have come here. The cave was empty, but the High Priest's voice rang out in Wang Chong's mind. Is the High Priest referring to the energy underground, or the matter I asked the substitute High Priest about? Wang Chong calmly said. This place was covered in the tough rocks of Hyderabad. If the High Priest was unwilling, he would find it very difficult to force him out. You shouldn't have come to either. The Sin the high priest sighed, his voice ancient. You've read the Book of Paimon, so you should know that the more you know, the more dangerous it is for you. Wang Chong's face was calm, but his eyebrows rose. Just as he had guessed, nothing could escape the high priest's eyes, even though he was deep underground. There are some things that cannot be escaped. The sun will rise and the moon will set. This is inescapable. Rather than blindly running away, it was better to take the initiative to find out the truth. At the very least, he wouldn't panic when disaster approached. Chapter 12:22. If the price was your life, would you still say this? The Sin the high priest said. Haha, I've already cast aside life and death. Wang Chong indifferently said, his head slightly raised as he spoke, exuding a chilling aura. These words were a true reflection of Wang Chong's heart. If he cherished life, Wang Chong would not have used up all his wealth to lead several thousand warriors to battle with Nanzhao. If he cherished death, he would not have managed Qixi and struggled through the cracks. In the end, he had still led his army to participate in the Battle of Talas despite knowing how difficult it would be. To Wang Chong, the Black God Seal, and the otherworldly invaders were more important than anything else. No matter what, he had to get to the bottom of all this. So High Priest, can you tell me what this seal is? Why was the Elam civilization destroyed? What's the deal with the destructive energy deep underground? Wang Chong solemnly said. As he spoke, he took out the paper with the black eye, his eyes brimming with anticipation. The High Priest's words revealed many secrets. Not only that, everything in this place was shrouded in mystery. Just the ancient Harappa characters on the metal door alone were not something an ordinary person could come into contact with. Wang Chong's intuition told him that if there was one person who could explain the truth behind all these secrets, it was this Sin the High Priest who had lived for centuries in the depths of the Hyderabad Mountains. Everything has a beginning, and everything has an end. There are some things that you can only seek out on your own. The answer you will obtain from me may not be what you want. The Sin the High Priest's voice drifted through the cave. All was quiet, and the feeling in Wang Chong's heart intensified. No matter who the High Priest was, he definitely knew many things. Tell me, just who are they? Did they destroy the Elam dynasty? Why did they do this? Most importantly, are these people still alive? The last sentence was earth-shattering. The Elam dynasty's black-eye god imprint was too similar to the one Wang Chong had seen in the post-apocalyptic era. Wang Chong had always guessed that if the Book of Paimon recorded them, then this was probably the only clue he had found regarding them. If he could find these people, he might be able to uncover the truth of the post-apocalyptic era. This was extremely important to Wang Chong. Buzz! As soon as Wang Chong's voice fell, the cave suddenly fell silent. The High Priest's aura also disappeared in an instant, and the atmosphere became extremely mysterious. I didn't expect you to even know this. The High Priest's first sentence shocked Wang Chong to the core. In an instant, his heart was in turmoil. Wang Chong's words had only been a guess, as the two marks separated by thousands of years were far too similar. But the Sin the High Priest's words had made this guess a reality. You already know all the answers, so why bother asking? Why? Wang Chong calmly said, but his mind was truly shaken. I can't answer you. I can only tell you that everything has a reason. When you are looking for them, they are also looking for you. You also have something that they want. You can't get away from it. Soon, those people will also find you. The answers you want are all in your hands. You can only rely on yourself to find them. But you have to be careful. The Sin the High Priest said. What? Wang Chong's expression flickered. He had never imagined that the High Priest would say such a thing. I have something they want on me? High Priest, just what are you talking about? Wang Chong sat up and stared at the Sin the High Priest. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly felt that the situation had developed beyond his expectations. Wang Chong had come to the Hyderabad Mountains in search of the otherworldly invaders, and the secret of the Eye of God mentioned in the Book of Paimon. But the High Priest had revealed a completely different answer to Wang Chong. Wang Chong had always believed that he was pursuing the Eye of God, but it now appeared that the Eye of God was also pursuing him. Had his pursuit of the secret of the Eye of God been exposed? So the Eye of God wanted to silence him. When the time comes, you will naturally understand. When you stare into the abyss stares back at you. Young man, if you want to retreat, there is still time. The high priest's voice seemed to have a deeper meaning. No matter what, I will not retreat. Wang Chong shook his head. Everything had its risks. Wang Chong understood that the high priest was warning him. If a faction that could destroy the Elam dynasty wanted to deal with him, he would be in equally great danger. But Wang Chong could not retreat, nor would he retreat. He had to investigate the matter of the apocalypse. There was a faint laugh in the air, and then there was no more sound. Wang Chong was well aware that since the high priest had decided to keep the secret, he would not tell him. Then what's with that underground tide of energy? Wang Chong asked once more. There are some things that exist far beyond the history of humanity. That ball of energy has existed for tens of thousands of years. The Hyderabad mountains you see now, including the special or within, exist precisely because of it. Tens of thousands of years have subtly influenced it to produce such a unique thing, and you have already seen it for yourself. You can dig up the ore in the mountains as you please, but with your abilities, you cannot approach the energy underground. Moreover, that ball of energy is very unstable and could explode at any moment. This is also why I have been standing guard here and stopping you. The high priest said. What? Hearing these words, Wang Chong almost stood up in shock. Hyderabad, or rather Wuxia steel, was the most unique weapon in the world. Even meteoric iron could not compare to it. This was something that Wang Chong had always known, but he had never imagined that, according to the high priest, the reason for the existence of the Hyderabad mountains, and even the unique veined Wuxia steel, was entirely because of the destructive energy he had sensed underground. How is this possible? Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. If what the high priest said was true, then it was too shocking. Leave. After a long silence, the high priest's voice resounded in the cave once more. I've already made an exception and told you too many things. I've told you all that I can. As for the rest, even if you ask me, I won't answer. You can only rely on yourself to figure everything out. With these last words, the cave fell silent, and not a single sound could be heard. High priest. High priest. Wang Chong called out twice, but there was no response from the cave. Wang Chong knew that this time, the high priest would really not answer any more questions. After staying in the cave for a while, Wang Chong finally sighed, stood up, and walked towards the door. Wait! Just as Wang Chong walked to the door, unexpectedly, the space loosened, and a square iron box suddenly flew out from the darkness. Under the influence of an invisible force, it flew in front of Wang Chong. At first glance, this iron box looked simple and ordinary, but when Wang Chong stretched out his hand to catch it, a heavy force came from his hand, as if he was not holding a small box but a heavy cauldron. Chi! The moment Wang Chong caught it, several sharp spikes suddenly extended from the bottom of the box and pierced through Wang Chong's fingers. The drops of blood were quickly absorbed into the box, and the top of the box suddenly began to shine with a hazy light. Then, it rapidly grew lighter, as if it were nothing in his hand. This is... Wang Chong immediately stopped, a look of shock on his face. This item can help you, so you have to protect it well. This is also a gift for helping Sinnu. The high priestess' voice disappeared very quickly. This time, it was really silent and there was no sound at all. After a few moments of silence, Wang Chong took the square box and walked out. But in a flash of light, a boundless starry sky suddenly appeared before his eyes. Alarmed, Wang Chong turned his head and realized that he was standing on the summit of the Hyderabad mine. The surroundings were quiet. Other than Wang Chong, there were only the craggy rocks shrouded in the darkness. Everything was like a dream, as if it was just an illusion. But a breeze ruffled his hair, and when he felt the texture of the metal box in his hand, Wang Chong immediately realized that this was no illusion. Wang Chong stood on the summit in a daze, not moving for a long time. After a few moments, Wang Chong finally waved his sleeve and flew back to his residence. Everything had returned to normal, and Wang Chong was well aware that it would be a very long time before he could see that mysterious high priest again. When Wang Chong returned to the metal palace he had built on the mountain, deep underground, across from the cave Wang Chong had stayed in, Several plumes of dust suddenly fell to the ground. Something seemed to blink behind the dust, and then it slowly opened. It was a pair of human eyes. No one had ever seen such a pair of eyes. They were old and profound, imbued with the mark of time, as if all the secrets were hidden within them. Is all of this fate? I didn't think that after so many twists and turns, the child of destiny would actually come to Sindhu. This is all I can help you with. The rest will depend on your own luck. The high priest murmured to himself. Very soon, he closed his eyes and all the sounds disappeared. It was as if nothing had happened. A few moments later, Wang Chong returned to his room. The two candles were still quietly burning. The length of the candle clearly indicated that Wang Chong had only been gone for a few moments. After closing the door, Wang Chong muttered to himself for a few moments, and then he took out the square metal box. Chapter 12:23. I only asked the high priest about the secret of the god's eye. Why did he give me a metal box? What is the meaning of this? In the candlelight, Wang Chong carefully examined the metal box in his hand. It was gray and lacked any luster. It looked like it was made of the simplest iron embryo. It did not arouse any interest at all. But soon, Wang Chong's attention was focused on a crystal the size of a pinky finger on top of the metal box. This was the only part of the metal box that could attract Wang Chong's attention. That misty brilliance was emitted from this crystal. What does the high priest mean by this? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. He tried all kinds of methods, channeling Gang Qi from all directions, and kept probing, but there was no reaction. Wang Chong tried to probe it with his psychic energy, but the psychic energy entered from one side, and immediately came out the other side like air, as if there was nothing in his hand. After dozens of attempts, there was still nothing. Wang Chong could only give up for now. Buzz! A moment later, just as Wang Chong was about to put the metal box aside, suddenly, there was a sudden change. Without the slightest warning, the crystal on top of the metal box suddenly shone brightly, flashing and emitting a strong emerald green light. This is... Wang Chong's eyelids twitched, and he instantly became much more clear-headed. Wang Chong was bewildered. Just as he was surprised by the change in the metal box, suddenly whoosh, a gust of air blew in. At first glance, Wang Chong did not feel anything. But the next moment, Wang Chong immediately smelled a faint smell in the air. No, something's wrong. Wang Chong's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately covered his mouth and nose. From this gust of air, Wang Chong felt a strange smell. This was definitely not a normal change in airflow. In the blink of an eye, another gust of air blew in. This time, Wang Chong clearly saw some tiny green particles. Poison. No matter how slow Wang Chong's reaction was, he still understood. Wang. A gust of stellar energy burst out of his body and quickly enveloped Wang Chong. Candlelight flickered in the room, and at the same time, the crystal on the metal box in Wang Chong's hand flickered with an intense light. In just a short period of time, more and more green mist poured into the room, and it was getting stronger and stronger. In just a short period of time, the green mist had seeped in through all the cracks in the steel palace. In an instant, the room had turned into a sea of green mist. Do it! A hoarse voice came from outside the room. The next moment, the iron door opened with a bang, and a figure with a black iron mask on his face pounced in like lightning. He turned in midair, and immediately pounced towards Wang Chong. Humph! Wang Chong coldly snorted, and instantly extinguished the candle on the table. At the same time, he flipped his palm and pounced toward the man in black. Pung! The two palms collided, and a powerful suction immediately erupted from Wang Chong's body. The energy of the masked man in black instantly surged like a river into Wang Chong's body. Not good. He wasn't poisoned at all. The eyes of the masked man in black were filled with shock. Quick, do it! There was a flash of light, and the sound of clothes fluttering through the air could be heard. Just as Wang Chong was controlling the hands of the masked man in black, there was a flash of cold light. Two other masked men with swords in their hands flew towards Wang Chong's left and right like phantoms. Wang Chong smiled casually. Kacha! With a single palm, he threw the masked man in black away. He crashed into the steel wall behind him like a cannonball, and the powerful force directly smashed him into the wall. At the same time, Wang Chong's stellar energy was as tough as steel. The two sword-wielding masked men in black were unable to advance a single inch. Boom! Wang Chong's stellar energy exploded, and a moment later, the two men in black were sent flying like ragdolls with their strings cut, their eyes filled with shock. These people were definitely top-class assassins, but given Wang Chong's current level of cultivation, only an expert of the great general level would be able to threaten him. But things were far from over. As the two men were sent flying, Wang Chong's heart thumped, and he suddenly raised his head. Rumble! Without any warning, the entire ceiling and roof of Wang Chong's steel palace were flung into the air by some invisible energy. Soon after, a shadow flew in and a powerful aura that was as vast as the sea swooped down. Boom! Wang Chong's eyes chilled, and with a flip of his palm, he fiercely collided with the two palms of the descending figure. A fierce gale swept through the surroundings, and at the same time, a thick stream of violet-black flames shot toward Wang Chong. The flames sizzled as they burned the stellar energy. Like the roots of a tree, these tiny flames followed Wang Chong's stellar energy and began to coil around Wang Chong's body. Black smoke immediately began to rise from Wang Chong's body. But before these flames could coil around his body, another stellar energy, as fierce as the sun, exploded from Wang Chong's body and sent the black figure flying. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, the man rolled backwards and immediately landed on the southwest corner of the wall. His whole body was like a spear stuck there, stable and motionless. It's you! Wang Chong's pupils constricted, his eyes turning sharp. The familiar black robes, the familiar energy. These people were identical to the ones who had driven Lu Wu to the Wang clan. One was in the Central Plains, and one was in the distant Sinlu. Wang Chong had never imagined that these people would chase him all the way to Sinlu. Buzz! Wang Chong's eyes chilled, and just when he was about to pursue, there was a flash of light. From the other three corners of the room, three figures appeared. The exact same figures, the exact same energy, making it impossible to tell which one was which. Moreover, all four of them exuded the same powerful energy. Wang Chong, you really shouldn't have come here. At this moment, a gloomy voice suddenly rang out in the night sky. The voice was erratic, making it impossible to tell which of the four people had spoken. You managed to escape last time, but you might not be able to this time. Another voice spoke up again. As soon as the voice fell, the four of them attacked together. Boom! In a flash of light, the four of them used the exact same technique, unleashing a torrent of surging stellar energy. The energy exuded by these four black-clothed assassins was suffocating. The attacks of the four were fast, but Wang Chong's counterattack was even faster. Boom! In a flash of light, the sun and moon appeared at the same time, the blazing sun rapidly expanding and engulfing Wang Chong in its radiance. The stellar energy of the four collided with Wang Chong's sun, but not only were they unable to advance, they began to twist, spin, and then vanish into nothingness. In the Battle of Talas, when he and his master, the evil emperor, had used the highest level of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art to kill Kateba, Wang Chong's understanding of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art had greatly increased. Wang Chong could now use both Yin and Yang at will, reaching a level where he could move them as freely as his own arm. But before the first wave had even subsided, the moment Wang Chong had vanquished it, there was a flash of fire, and the strange black and violet flames began to pour out like a river, engulfing Wang Chong from all sides. In a flash, Wang Chong's stellar energy began to burn and sizzle as it corroded Wang Chong's body. The black and violet flames once more began to spread uncontrollably through Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong's stellar energy was of no use against them. With the four of them working together, it took only a few moments for Wang Chong's stellar energy to be reduced by 1/20th. Great shattering art. Just when the four streams of violet energy were about to enter Wang Chong's meridians, Wang Chong immediately exploded with destructive energy. A terrifying energy darker than the darkness, so dark that not even light could penetrate it, exploded from Wang Chong's body. Boom! This destructive energy immediately sent the four of them flying, and the black and violet flames that had invaded Wang Chong's body came to a screeching halt. It's this flame again. Wang Chang's eyes turned cold. This energy gave him a very similar feeling to the strength of Lu Wu, but it was even more tyrannical. This isn't the strength of Lu Wu that you encountered back then. This is a flame specifically designed to suppress you. No matter how strong you are, even if you've broken into the great general level, you still won't be able to stop it. The leader of the black-clothed assassins spoke once more, but his voice was so erratic that it was impossible to guess who had spoken. As soon as they finished speaking, the 4 top-notch black-clothed assassins spread their fingers, and in an instant, 4 towering purplish-black flames shot out. This violet and black light painted the summit in a bewitching violet, giving off an extremely bizarre feeling. The strength of Lu Wu. This was a power even stronger than the strength of Lu Wu. This corrosive energy completely ignored the opponent's cultivation, and not even a great general could stop it. This was the special gift they had prepared for Wang Chong. Go. Without the slightest hesitation, the 4 of them moved, leaving afterimages in their wake. The violet-black flames in their hands swelled to several dozen times their original size, drawing out the outline of countless craggy rocks in the darkness. Bang! The violet-black flames blotted out the heavens and earth, attacking Wang Chong from every angle. The 4 of them coordinated their attacks so well that they left no room for Wang Chong to retreat. The strength of Lu Wu was their strongest move. With this terrifying flame, they had already killed many powerful foes, including an imperial great general. Wang Chong would not be able to stop them. Chapter 1224. The Stellar Energy Piercer. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong instantly activated this powerful ability. The Stellar Energy Piercer is not a technique that only you people know. Wang Chong sneered, instantly shattering the assassin's heart. The purplish-black flames ignored stellar energy defenses, and this ability was similar to Wang Chong's Stellar Energy Piercer to a certain extent. These black-clothed assassins used the purplish-black flames to corrode Wang Chong's meridians, but for Wang Chong, it was far less troublesome, and he killed one of the assassins with a single strike. This is impossible. Seeing this scene, the 3 assassins behind him were completely dumbfounded. Wang Chong's attack was too fast, and the assassin fell even faster. This was completely different from what they had expected. Kill him. The 3's eyes turned bloodshot, and they quickly lunged at Wang Chong. At the same time, there was a fierce shout, and the other 2 assassins wielding sharp swords became one with their swords. Like 2 bolts of lightning, they attacked Wang Chong together. Whoosh! And just above them, there was a flash of light, and someone seemed to be waving a bag. Immediately a thick green mist, along with the wind, swept toward Wang Chong. You're courting death. A cold light flashed in Wang Chong's eyes. Clang! Before the others could react, a golden light exploded out of thin air, instantly piercing through the layers of space, and piercing through the assassin in black, who was in the middle of applying poison. Puff puff! The assassin's throat slid, and he instantly fell to the ground motionless. And almost at the same time, there was a flash of light, and Wang Chong split into 3. 3 identical figures appeared at the top of the Hyderabad mountain range. Seeing this scene, the 3 assassins in black shuddered. Even with their cultivation, they were completely unable to distinguish whether the 3 Wang Chong were real or fake. Don't worry about it, attack together. The 3 of them were startled for a moment before they attacked without hesitation. There was a flash of light, and a sizzling sound could be heard in the air. 3 huge purplish-black flames burst out in an instant. Each flame was expanding rapidly, expanding the area it covered to the limit. This way, no matter which Wang Chong was real, they would all be attacked. In the minds of the 3 of them, regardless of whether Wang Chong was real or an illusion, they would be able to quickly distinguish it. However, the development of the matter was completely different from what they had imagined. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, there was a shrill scream. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the 3 illusions of Wang Chong were destroyed at the same time. Behind one of the assassins, a slender figure suddenly appeared. 5 fingers were like iron pincers, clamping down on the assassin's neck and lifting him up from the ground. White Tiger! It's that kid. Everyone immediately recognized that the figure behind the assassin was none other than Wang Chong. Stellar energy surged around his body as he pushed the great yin-yang heaven creation art to its limits. Violet energy surged out of the assassin's body and into Wang Chong's. With the help of this violet energy, Wang Chong's energy swelled, and a majestic vitality erupted from his body. Violet light also erupted from Wang Chong's body. Not good. This bastard is absorbing the Jubai energy. Seeing this scene, the black-clothed men turned pale with fright. The violet flames of the Jubai energy were so intense that not even great generals could resist them. But if Wang Chong was able to control this power, they would lose the ability to fight against Wang Chong. Although Wang Chong was powerful, he was not scary, and his illusion power was nothing to be afraid of. But if Wang Chong absorbed the Jubai energy and possessed the same violet-black flames as them, they would no longer have the power to fight against Wang Chong. This was the power of the great yin-yang heaven creation art. Boom! The air rumbled as the men in black anxiously charged at Wang Chong. But it was too late. The black-clothed assassin that Wang Chong had restrained began to pour his violet-black energy into Wang Chong's body, fusing with the power of Lu Wu in Wang Chong's body. Aya! Aya! The assassin screamed as his flesh and energy surged into Wang Chong's body like a punctured balloon. The surrounding men in black had only taken a few steps before Wang Chong had sucked away all the Jubai energy in the assassin's body. What a powerful strength! Wang Chong stood where he was, and with a thump, he tossed the corpse of the assassin to the ground. Wang Chong half closed his eyes as he silently sensed the new energy in his body. Although the great yin-yang heaven creation art had absorbed many kinds of energy, none of them had given Wang Chong such a domineering and fierce feeling. It seemed unstoppable and could incinerate all, but it was also brimming with life energy. Wang Chong had only been absorbing it for a few moments, but he could already sense that the cells in his body had been greatly strengthened. This tyrannical energy filled Wang Chong's mind, making Wang Chong feel like he had to spit it out. Rumble! In a flash of light, two violet-black flames brimming with destructive energy, 3 sharp swords, and surging torrents of stellar energy rained down on Wang Chong's body, completely annihilating him. Is he dead? The surrounding black-clothed men were bewildered. They had thought that they would have to struggle for some time, and had not expected to succeed so easily. But in the next moment, there was a boom as the violet-black flames scattered, revealing Wang Chong's figure. His body was brimming with stellar energy, and he had not been weakened in the slightest. In front of him, 2 divine swords floated in the air, several inches away from Wang Chong, completely unable to advance. At this moment, Wang Chong's expression was icy, his long hair flying in the wind. He was like a demon god in the darkness. Not good. Run! Seeing this, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. An intense sense of danger surged over them like a tide, causing their scalps to go numb. This feeling was suffocating. Buzz! The crowd madly fled. If they could not even deal with Wang Chong with the power of Jubai, then they had already lost all means to deal with Wang Chong. Do you think you can run? An icy voice suddenly resounded in their ears. The black-clothed men had reacted very quickly, and they had all fled in different directions, but they were still too slow. Bang bang bang! In a flash of cold light, several black-clothed men fell to the ground at almost the same time. 2 had been pierced by swords, 2 had been burned to ash by violet-black flames, and 2 had been turned into dried corpses by Wang Chong's great yin-yang heaven creation art. Wang Chong threw the dried corpses to the ground and turned his head to look at the last black-clothed man. The latter trembled, a trace of fear on his face, but he quickly regained his composure and sneered, "Don't bother. Don't bother. I won't tell you anything." As the man spoke, he clenched his teeth. In the blink of an eye, a thick black flame burst out from his body. In the blink of an eye, the man in black was burned to ashes. At this sight, Wang Chong relaxed his fingers, the chill in his eyes dispersing. Even though he had seen this many times before, Wang Chong was still helpless against the suicidal methods of these black-clothed men. Whenever these black-clothed men were captured, they would burn themselves to ash without hesitation, not giving Wang Chong the slightest chance. But in the blink of an eye, Wang Chong came back to his senses. At the same time, he could hear the sounds of fighting. Kyle. Standing on the summit, one could see that the Hyderabad mountains were ablaze with flames and thick plumes of smoke. In the darkness, countless people had infiltrated the Hyderabad mountains and were carrying out assassinations. Just what are these people up to? As the wind howled in his ears, countless thoughts flitted through Wang Chong's mind. He simply couldn't understand why these men in black had appeared here. After harming so many people and chasing them all the way to Sinno, they had slaughtered their way through. Was it all just to kill him? Rumble. Amidst his bewilderment, the world suddenly swayed. An enormous energy erupted like a volcano, erupting from the earth and shaking the entire Hyderabad mountains. Under the influence of this terrifying power, the entire Hyderabad mountain range and the ground beneath their feet began to shake violently. This is... Wang Chong grimaced as he vaguely realized something. This direction was clearly coming from the underground high priest. In a flash, Wang Chong found it hard to maintain his composure. These black-clothed men had come too suddenly. Wang Chong had never imagined that even the Sin the high priest would be under their attack. And what was even more unbelievable was that the high priest's residence was extremely well hidden. The terrain of the mountain range was so complex that even Wang Chong had only been able to find the high priest by chance. And he had even been summoned by the high priest. Just how had these people found the high priest? And this energy? How could there be such a powerful existence? As Wang Chong was worrying, a scream came from the ground, and then the quaking of the mountain range ceased. The earth quickly regained its calm, and all was quiet once more. Wang Chong gave a long sigh of relief. That scream clearly didn't come from the high priest. It's clear that the high priest won in this intense contest. But as he relaxed, Wang Chong felt an indescribable feeling. I didn't think that the high priest would have such a powerful cultivation. From that attack just now, he could tell that the high priest's cultivation was far above that of a peak great general. As these thoughts flitted through his mind, Wang Chong quickly calmed down and began to descend the mountain. There were still many men in black wreaking havoc. Even the Wuxian cavalry Wang Chong had left at the base of the mountain were being attacked. Chapter 1225. Poof, poof, poof. His sword shot through the air like a bolt of lightning, piercing through the bodies of 2 black-clothed men, then 3, 4, 10, 20. When Wang Chong joined the battle, he was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. Wherever he went, black-clothed assassins fell one after another. In just an hour, at least 100 black-clothed men had died at Wang Chong's hands. 2 hours later, all of the fighting was over. The entire Hyderabad mountain range was littered with the corpses of black-clothed men, and the majority of those who had died were the miners who had been slaughtered in the mines. Marquis, what should we do with these people? At the foot of the mountain, Li Sai's right foot was stepping on the back of a black-clothed man, his expression extremely furious. The ambush had happened too suddenly, and the martial arts of these black-clothed men were completely different from the martial arts of the army. They were vicious and ruthless, and many people had died in the ambush. However, the black-clothed men had also paid a price. Not only had a considerable number of people been killed, but Li Sai had also led a group of people to capture a portion of them. Marquis, I'll have some people splash some water on them to wake them up and interrogate them. Let's find out where these people came from. Xue Qianjun said angrily. Wait a moment. Wang Chong waved his hand and hurriedly stopped Xue Qianjun. The group led by Li Sai had only managed to knock them unconscious by coincidence. Once they were awakened, they would basically all commit suicide. Let me handle this matter. With a thought from Wang Chong, a powerful wave of mental energy immediately burst forth, rushing into the mind of one of the black-clothed men like a tide. As expected, Wang Chong very quickly encountered a seal in the mind of this black-clothed man. As expected, Wang Chong nodded in his mind. These black-clothed men were extremely strict in their control, and they would not leave any openings. This was indeed the case. Although he encountered a layer of obstruction, the strength of this layer of obstruction was not strong. In just a moment, Wang Chong broke through this layer of restriction. How is it, Marquis? Have you found out where these people came from? Footsteps came from behind him. The king of Gonka walked over and asked softly. Wang Chong shook his head and cast a glance at the men in black, who had fainted on the ground in a row. Take off their masks. Everyone was surprised when they heard this. They didn't understand what Wang Chong meant. Xue Qianjun quickly walked over, bent down, and removed the mask of one of the black-clothed men. These are Khorasani. Looking at the face under the mask with wavy hair, hawk-like eyes and a tall nose, everyone looked at each other in shock. He then removed a second and third mask, revealing a wide variety of faces. Khorasani, Uzin, Western Turks, Chechikian, and even Sindhi. Everyone was stunned by these faces. These people are all assassins of the lowest level. They don't know many secrets. Wang Chong indifferently said. Psychic energy had obtained very few clues, and based on what he had gathered, they knew almost nothing. Li Sai and the king of Gonka had not been of much help in capturing these people. Li Sai, take them away. After saying this, Wang Chong shot off in another direction. In the middle of the Hyderabad mountains, in a collapsed mine, Wang Chong met with Ablanadin, Arloja, and the substitute high priest in front of that crude temple. His aura was somewhat chaotic, as if he had just experienced a major battle. Venerable Master, how is it? Wang Chong walked over, a look of concern on his face. I'm fine. They were all beaten off, and only suffered some light injuries. But what a pity. The substitute high priest turned his head, and gave a long sigh, as he gazed at the piles of corpses, and the bloody mist in the air. Wang Chong fell silent. There was nothing he could do about this. The miners of the Hyderabad mountains were almost all ordinary people, with weak constitutions. There were not many experts among them. Although Wang Chong had done his utmost to stop them, he had been unable to change anything. In addition, how is the high priest doing? Wang Chong asked. The tremors deep underground had left him rather uneasy. The high priest is fine. He had long ago predicted that Marquis would ask this question, so he had us wait here. The substitute high priest bowed to Wang Chong. In addition, the high priest asked me to pass on a message to you. Fate comes and goes, and fate comes and goes. Everything has its own destiny. He has already told you what he should tell you. Almsgiver, don't be so stubborn. Before Wang Chong could ask for more details, the substitute high priest cut off all of Wang Chong's questions. Marquis, no one can change the high priest's mind once he has decided on something. If he says he won't see you, he definitely won't. There's nothing we can do about it. Arloja and Ablanov said. Wang Chong stood there in a daze for a long time without saying anything. Although he was very unwilling, he had no choice but to give up. Understood. Thank you. After Wang Chong said this, he looked around him deeply. He knew that the high priest would definitely be able to hear his words. Whoosh! With a flash of light, Wang Chong quickly leaped outside and disappeared. The night attack ended very quickly. No one knew where the black-clothed men came from, and no one knew why they launched the attack. Everything was a blank. Several days later, after bidding farewell to the substitute high priest, Wang Chong left behind half of the Wuxian cavalry to guard the Hyderabad mountains, while he set off for Khorasan with the other half. Around 7 or 8 days later, Wang Chong finally arrived at Khorasan. How is it? Have they all been eliminated? Reporting to Marquis. Following Marquis's orders, we eliminated all the men in black. Alas, we didn't get any useful information out of them. Li Sai bowed as he heard a voice by his ear. On his way back from the Hyderabad mountains, Wang Chong had noticed many men in black who had been following him. They had assumed all sorts of identities and were constantly around Wang Chong. But not even these men in black could have imagined that no matter how they disguised themselves, they could not escape Wang Chong's eyes and ears. Along the way, Wang Chong gradually realized that the unremarkable metal box the high priest had given him could accurately sense the auras of these men in black. No matter who they were or how they disguised themselves, as long as they got close to Wang Chong, they would be discovered. And the closer they got and the stronger they were, the more intensely the crystal on the top of the box would flash and glow. Combined with the stone of destiny in Wang Chong's mind, which could display the surrounding terrain, Wang Chong could even accurately sense where these men in black were lying in ambush. Wang Chong nodded. Although he didn't know why the high priest had such a thing, There was no doubt that this metal box would allow him to guard against those men in black. Putting aside the matter of the men in black, Wang Chong rode his horse and led his army back to the lord of the city residence. In a little more than half a month, Khorasan had undergone a major transformation. As far as Wang Chong could see, the warlike atmosphere of the city had been swept away, and the entire city was thriving. As he walked along the streets, he could see that the faces of the people were also brimming with joy. And the greatest transformation was on the streets. In this foreign city tens of thousands of li away from the Tang dynasty, many of the faces of the Tang people of the Central Plains had begun to appear. Their clothes were embroidered with the insignia of various great clans, and they were selling silk, tea, porcelain, and all sorts of exquisite handicrafts from the Central Plains. Marquis, Lord Feng truly is formidable. Those Khorasani were very respectful and full of smiles when trading with us Tang people. It seems like the Khorasani have already completely accepted us. Xue Qianjun excitedly walked over from the rear. Khorasan was a foreign land, and they had never encountered anything here before. For Feng Changqing to be able to manage this place to this extent in such a short time was truly an incredible feat. Wang Chong said nothing, only gave a slight nod. Compared to that, he was more concerned about something else. Seated on the white-hoofed shadow, Wang Chong turned his head in another direction, where a Chinese-style school had been erected. The faint sounds of reading came from the school, not in the Khorasani language that the people here were most familiar with, but in the language of the Tang dynasty. These voices were extremely unrefined, but they were brimming with passion. A seed had been planted, and it had already sprouted. In the future, these seeds might spread throughout all of Khorasan and completely alter the fate of the Tang dynasty in this land. Boom! As he was thinking, the earth suddenly quaked, and the clopping of hooves could be heard. Wang Chong raised his head and saw that Gao Xianji, Feng Changqing, and Banahan were riding over on their horses. Haha, Wang Chong, how is it? Did your trip to Sinda go smoothly? Gao Xianji led the way toward Wang Chong. He seemed to be in a very good mood. Lord Protector General, Wang Chong faintly smiled as he rode forward. Wang Chong, your strategy was truly effective. Everything in Khorasan is on the right track. In addition, the first group of soldiers sent by the imperial court has already arrived at Khorasan, and the rest have already arrived at Samarkand. I trust that they will arrive soon. Gao Xianji stroked his beard and chuckled. The more he looked at Wang Chong, the more he liked him. Whether it was in politics, military affairs, logistics, government affairs, or any other aspect, Wang Chong was someone he had never seen before. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have found it very difficult to believe that a 17-year-old youth could be so talented. Wang Chong had not only saved his life, but also the entire Anqi Protectorate army. To Gao Xianji, Wang Chong was definitely a friend who had gone through thick and thin with him. If anyone dared to act against Wang Chong, Gao Xianji would be the first to step forward and say no. I've already written a memorial recording all your achievements and sent it to the imperial court. I trust that it won't be long before the imperial court announces your reward. If not for you, we would never have been able to reach Khorasan. I'm confident that the imperial court will reward you handsomely, and I've heard that the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Personnel are already discussing how to reward you after this battle, and even the matter of your title. Chapter 1226. Lord Protector General's praise is too much. As a general, leading an army to conquer the border and achieve great feats is part of my duty. What is there to reward? Wang Chong indifferently said, his expression extremely calm. Whether it was the Battle of Nanzhao or the Battle of Talas, Wang Chong did not care about these things. Winning the Battle of Talas and resolving an invisible crisis was what Wang Chong cared about. Let's go, Wang Chong said. With these words, he led the way out of the room. One reason for his return from Sindha was that the matter of the Hyderabad had been resolved. The other reason was that Wang Chong had received a letter from Feng Changqing from Khorasan. Just how is the matter in Khorasan going? Upon reaching the Lord's Hall in Khorasan, Wang Chong got straight to the point. There were no outsiders in the room, and the people in this room were essentially the upper echelon of the Tang dynasty. The smile on Feng Changqing's face faded, and his brow sank. Everything is as Lord Protector General predicted. Without the great enemy of Arabia, Khorasan is on the right track, but a few hidden problems are gradually beginning to reveal themselves. Although the various rebel armies are still very respectful of our Tang dynasty, they are no longer as harmonious with each other. In this period of time, I've already received reports of conflicts between the rebel armies. Our warriors do not speak the same language and have very special identities. If we recklessly interfere, we will inevitably be accused of favoring one side and being unfair to the other side. Not only that, the leaders of the rebel armies have also begun to disagree with each other. Although they appear to be at peace on the surface, undercurrents are surging beneath the surface, and they are no longer as united as before. Feng Changqing made no attempt to conceal his concern. He could deal with political affairs, but the affairs of the rebel armies were far from as simple as right and wrong. Wang Chong, this is not a good omen. If we don't properly deal with this matter, the coalition army will quickly fall apart. Gao Xinji said worriedly. In truth, the Tang dynasty did not have many soldiers in Khorasan. 80% of the more than 200,000 soldiers in the army were rebels. If this matter was not handled properly, the Tang dynasty would lose its hard-won gains. Without the help of these rebel armies, the Tang dynasty would never have been able to resist the Arabian Empire so close to Baghdad. I have already done my best to assist Lord Feng in dealing with this matter, but it is truly difficult. Su Hanshan also spoke up. So all the things I said back then have happened? Wang Chong said calmly. Before leaving Khorasan, Wang Chong had left a letter for Feng Changqing, mentioning that if any of those things happened in Khorasan, Feng Changqing had to be informed to return as soon as possible. And now, Wang Chong's predictions had all come true. A man without foresight would have immediate worries. The threat of the Arabs had been temporarily removed, but the internal conflicts were far more difficult to deal with. That's right. Although the situation isn't obvious right now, there are already signs. If we can't think of a solution in time, it'll only get worse, and then it'll be too late. Feng Changqing sighed. All of them had the experience of dealing with these matters while the political, military, and bureaucratic systems were stable and mature. But Khorasan was a foreign territory, and none of them, including the entire Tang dynasty, had much experience in dealing with the Khorasanian rebels who did not speak the same language. I've already thought of a way to resolve this matter, Wang Chong calmly said. Lord Protector General Lord Feng, inform Bahram that the Tang dynasty will help them rebuild the Sassanid dynasty. Rumble. Wang Chong's words were like a stone thrown into a ripple. Everyone in the hall was stunned by these words. The Sassanid dynasty was an ancient empire that had been destroyed by the Arabs 10-some years ago. Wang Chong actually wanted to rebuild this ancient empire after such a long time? Wang Chong, have you thought about whether His Majesty will agree? Gao Xinji asked in shock. All of you have already seen the problem with the coalition army. If we don't do this, the entire alliance will quickly crumble. Rebuilding the Sassanid dynasty will not only allow the Tang dynasty to gain a firm foothold here, it will also win over the hearts of the people and raise its prestige. In addition, we can also use this method to support the small countries on the border of Arabia in establishing their own countries. In this way, we can move 1,000 pounds with little effort. While we don't have to expend much of our own soldiers, we can reduce Arabia's national strength to the minimum. This is the true way to deal with Arabia once and for all. In addition, this method can also eliminate the problems within the coalition army. In addition, even if we support the Sassanid dynasty, we can continue to station our soldiers here, and even carve out a camp for ourselves in Khorasan. Wang Chong indifferently said. In that other world, vassal states and garrisons were an extremely mature method. There were not many casualties, and one could maintain an enormous influence. Using this method, the Tang dynasty could mobilize the strength of all the rebel armies in Khorasan at any time, even stronger than the current method. This was because the Tang dynasty had provided Khorasan and the other rebel armies with the ability to resist the Arabs. This was the best method at the moment. At Wang Chong's words, Gao Xinji and the others in the hall appeared much better. Wang Chong, although I don't know if this is right or wrong, there's no better method right now. Let's do as you say. No matter what, this is better than losing Kurasan, Gao Xinji said. In the hall, they discussed many details, and the news quickly reached Bahram's ears. What? Bahram excitedly stood up from his seat at this news. As the highest commander of the Aswaran cataphracts and the highest-ranking great general of the Sassanid dynasty, Bahram had a composed and steady personality, but in the face of this shocking news, he could no longer maintain his composure. Rebuild the Sassanid dynasty. This was something that Bahram had never even dared to think about. As long as the Arabian Empire existed, the Sassanid dynasty would never be able to establish a state, but deep in his heart, this truly was what Bahram and countless Khorasani desired the most. Ever since the destruction of their kingdom, countless Khorasani had been startled awake from their dreams and wept in their sleep. My lords, Bahram does not know what to say. Bahram and all the people of Khorasani will forever remember the kindness of my lords and the Tang dynasty. Bahram's eyes were red, and the other Khorasani were also agitated. Zamoy, quickly inform Her Royal Highness and tell her this news. The word princess caused Wang Chong and Gao Xinji to glance at each other in shock. The two of them had always known of the existence of the Sassanid imperial household, but none of them had expected it to be a princess. Many thanks, my lords. A few moments later, an extremely beautiful and delicate girl with the distinctive features of Khorasani and long, wavy hair appeared before them. She respectfully bowed to Wang Chong and Gao Xinji. Wang Chong and Gao Xinji looked at this Sassanid princess, a hint of amazement in their eyes. This princess of the Sassanid imperial family was noble and elegant, possessing a breathtaking beauty. Her gentle and delicate aura made others feel an intense desire to protect her. Upon seeing this girl, the two finally understood why Bahram and all the Khorasani had guarded her so closely. There is no need for princess to be so polite. Khurasan and the Tang dynasty are firm allies, and this is what we should be doing, Gao Xinji said. The stunningly beautiful Sassanid princess nodded, and then turned to Wang Chong. There is also General Wang. Adia has heard of General's great name before, but I didn't think that General Wang would be so young. As Adia spoke, she glanced at Wang Chong, her large and round eyes flashing with a strange emotion. At this moment, Adia exuded such an astonishing beauty that even Gao Xinji and Bahram were dumbfounded. Wang Chong's heart thumped as he hurriedly returned the bow. Princess is too kind. After leaving the room, Gao Xinji glanced at Wang Chong and couldn't help but smile. Lord Protector General, congratulations. It seems that it won't be long before you become the Sassanid dynasty's son-in-law. Perhaps even a prince or emperor of the Sassanid dynasty. Lord Gao. Wang Chong could hear the ridicule in Gao Xinji's words, and he was infuriated. On the other side, Gao Xinji knew when to stop, heartily laughing as he left. Meanwhile, in the room, Bahram watched Sassanid Princess Adia's departing figure with a pensive look in his eyes. The princess has already grown up, and has someone she likes. This young marquis of the Tang dynasty is handsome, valiant, and extremely decisive. Most importantly, he is still unmarried. If the Sassanid dynasty can be rebuilt, marrying the princess to him is not a bad idea. The news that the Sassanid dynasty was being rebuilt in Khurasan shook the entire Western world. The entire region to the west of the Tsong Mountains, including the Arabian Empire, was rocked by landslides and tsunamis. As the strongest empire that had once existed on the border of Arabia, the Sassanid dynasty was undoubtedly an extremely powerful foe of the Arabian Empire. Bastard! Upon receiving the news, Mutasim III clenched his hands so tightly that he felt like his fingers were about to break. The Tang dynasty was extremely sinister and wanted to use the Sassanid dynasty to resist Arabia for a long time. He naturally understood this. Damn it. Men, I don't care what price you have to pay, but no matter what, you must tear that Tang dynasty's Wang Chong to pieces. With Mutasim III's voice, the Arabian Empire began to turn like a machine. But with Wang Chong's current level of cultivation and strength, even in the Arabian Empire, it would be very difficult to find an existence that could deal with him. Chapter 1227. In addition, the Tang dynasty as an ally donated 10 million taels of gold to the Sassanid imperial household. The Sassanid dynasty returned the favor, choosing 2 large regions in the northeast and southwest of Khorasan as permanent garrisons for the Tang army. The Tang dynasty had absolute authority over these regions, and not even the Sassanid imperial household had the right to intrude. Not only that, out of respect and gratitude for the Tang dynasty, Bahram and the newly established Sassanid dynasty bestowed upon the Tang dynasty a supreme authority. At any time, as long as the Tang dynasty wished, it could mobilize all the soldiers of Khorasan, including the Iswaran cataphracts. Handing control of the Iswaran cataphracts over to the Tang dynasty was something that had never happened before. The firmness of the alliance between the Tang dynasty and Khorasan left everyone stunned. And as a backing, the Tang dynasty displayed its formidable ability as a backer. The day after the Sassanid dynasty was re-established and began recruiting soldiers, the Tang dynasty began to forge a large number of armor and weapons for the Sassanid dynasty. At the same time, Wang Chong and Gao Xianji selected 70 some of their most experienced generals to assist the Sassanid dynasty in training their soldiers. Khorasan had originally only had around 200,000 soldiers, but the Sassanid dynasty's enormous influence allowed it to recruit another 200,000 soldiers. Moreover, they were scattered across the 4 training grounds, where they trained day and night. Although the Sassanid dynasty had once been destroyed as one of the strongest empires of the Western world, the Khorasani were no less valiant than the Arabs, and in some aspects they even surpassed them. After a period of training, a new army that had just begun to have combat effectiveness was rapidly taking shape. Khorasan originally had more than 200,000 soldiers, and with this new army, it now had nearly 500,000 soldiers. Even against a powerful foe like Arabia, it now had the ability to protect itself. Everything was on the right track, and with the establishment of the Sassanid dynasty, the coalition army became even more solid. More importantly, with the establishment of the Sassanid dynasty, the internal conflicts within the rebel army had weakened considerably. By relying on the prestige of Bahram and the Sassanid dynasty, the rebellious army was quickly suppressed, and the seeds of unrest were nipped in the bud. Moreover, with the Sassanid dynasty stepping in, the Tang dynasty also avoided the danger of too much interference in the internal affairs of the rebel armies, which would lead to the Tang dynasty becoming enemies with the rebel armies. Not only that, the establishment of the Sassanid dynasty had also given hope to the rebel armies of the other tribes. As long as they could obtain the approval and assistance of the Tang dynasty, they would be able to establish their own empires and dynasties around the Arabian Empire. This was exactly what all the rebels were looking forward to. The establishment of the Sassanid dynasty gave even more rebel leaders hope, and they also saw the modesty and tolerance of the Tang dynasty. The Tang dynasty's prestige in the region around Arabia and in the rebel army deepened. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. All of Arabia was still immersed in that miserable defeat in the blizzard, and its vitality had yet to recover. For the time being, neither the newly established Sassanid dynasty nor the rebel armies of the other tribes had anything to worry about. And with Wang Chong's help in establishing the Sassanid dynasty, Bahram and the other rebel armies returned the favor. With the support of all sides, the Tang language schools established by Wen Shuyang and his disciples quickly began to blossom on the border of Arabia. And it wasn't just Khorasan. Samarkand, Bokhara, and the surrounding regions of Arabia all had Tang language schools established by Wen Shuyang. Every person who entered the Tang language schools would not only be provided with 3 meals a day, but also a bonus. A month of study in the schools would be equivalent to the income of the lowest paid craftsman. Not only that, the outstanding Khorasani and the rebel armies in the region would also be rewarded handsomely. The temptation of money had caused a large number of students to flood into the schools. In a short time, the number of people studying the Tang language had doubled, going from 3,000 or 4,000 to 7,000 or 8,000, and with the construction of new schools, the number was still rapidly increasing. Everything was going according to Wang Chong's plan, and everything was progressing in a good direction. In the marketplace, even the ordinary Khorasani would use some simple Tang language to greet the scions of the great clans, all of them brimming with smiles and brimming with enthusiasm. It had only been a few months, and this was truly inconceivable. Even the who like Banahan and Guli were dumbfounded by Wang Chong's ability to manage the city, and they couldn't help but admire him. As time slowly passed, Wang Chong handled official documents while directing the development of the coalition army. Just when Wang Chong believed that all of this would continue forever, an unexpected matter disrupted Wang Chong's plans. Marquis, Lord Gao requests an invitation. He says that an important guest has come to the city and requests that Milord come to receive him. Several days later, while Wang Chong was engrossed in documents, a soldier of the Anqi Protectorate Army walked in, a respectful expression on his face. "Oh, what kind of important guest requires me to personally receive him? And isn't there Lord Feng?" Wang Chong smiled, not even raising his head. He had left almost all the administrative matters of the city to Feng Chongqing, and with the establishment of the Sassanid dynasty and the establishment of a mature bureaucratic system, Wang Chong had an even easier time. "Marquis, this person is an emissary from the imperial court. Lord Feng and the other generals have already gone to the reception hall," the Anqi Protectorate Army soldier said. This time Wang Chong was surprised. Given the status of Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing, Wang Chong didn't know who was so important that all the soldiers of the Anqi Protectorate Army had to personally receive them. Could it be Geshu Han? But even Geshu Han was probably only on the same level as Gao Xianji, not at this level. "Who has come?" Wang Chong put down his brush, his curiosity finally piqued. "It's a eunuch of the imperial court. His surname is Bian, and his name is Bian Lingcheng." The Anqi Protectorate Army soldier spoke the truth, adding a final sentence. He added, "He has come bearing an imperial decree." "What?" At the mention of Bian Lingcheng, Wang Chong's pupils constricted, and he put down his brush and raised his head. Wang Chong had never imagined that he would hear this name at a time like this. "Take me there." Without another word, Wang Chong stood up and left. Before he could even get close to the reception hall, Wang Chong heard a sharp voice from within. "Lord Gao, long time no see. Lord Gao has conquered the Shur Kingdom, defeated Kataba, and occupied Khorasan. Your future prospects are limitless. It seems like it won't be long before I have to rely on Lord's whims and follow Lord's lead." This voice was imbued with a lofty and aloof tone. Although it called him Lord Gao, there was no respect in its voice. "I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare." The moment the sharp voice finished speaking, two voices that Wang Chong was familiar with spoke into the room. "It's Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing." Wang Chong's face instantly darkened. In all the time he had known Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing, Wang Chong had never seen them so polite to anyone. No, this was no longer polite but reverence and trepidation. Gao Xianji, who had never lowered his head in front of Wang Chong, was now lowering his head in front of that croaky voice, brimming with fear and unease. "Haha, of course. I wrote Milord 7 letters, but Milord never replied to a single one," the eccentric voice said. "Milord has misunderstood. Gao Xianji was just too busy with military affairs and had no time to reply." Gao Xianji's voice resounded in the reception hall. Wang Chong's brow furrowed deeper and deeper, and he finally couldn't help but push open the door and enter. Within the reception hall, he could see a eunuch dressed in a violet official's robe, seated on a black wooden armchair. He appeared lofty and lofty. Across from him stood Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, and the other generals of Anqi, all of them seemingly extremely apprehensive of this eunuch. When Qing Qianli, Shi Yuanqing, and the others saw the arrogant look on the other party's face, their faces turned even more ashen. However, none of them dared to say a word. It was as if they had to swallow their anger. Buzz! As Wang Chong walked in, the mood in the reception hall suddenly changed. The eunuch who had been sitting on the armchair this entire time suddenly sprang to his feet, and the oppressive Anqi generals imperceptibly breathed a sigh of relief. Wang Chong's eyes flashed like lightning. With a single glance, he understood what was going on. This luxuriously dressed eunuch was undoubtedly Bian Lingcheng. Of the three most famous eunuchs of the Tang dynasty, the first was the virtuous eunuch Gao Lisher, who had served at the side of the Holy Emperor for his entire life, ultimately dying to show his loyalty. But the other two were nothing good. One was the treacherous eunuch Li Fugua, who had served at the side of the fifth prince Li Heng, and was still called Li Jingzhong. And the third eunuch was Bian Lingcheng. Although he didn't seem to have much of a reputation, he actually possessed immense authority. From a certain perspective, the second eunuch Li Jingzhong was still far from being able to compare to him. The reason was very simple. Bian Lingcheng had single-handedly promoted Gao Xianji, who had been suppressed by Tian Renwan and Fomin Linta, and had even helped him ascend to the position of Anxi Protector General. Bian Lingcheng was also closely related to Gao Xianji, becoming one of the best great generals of the Tang dynasty, known as the Anxi War God, the Wall of the Empire. In this aspect, Bian Lingcheng wasn't that bad of a person, but success was a result of failure. Although Bian Lingcheng had helped Gao Xianji ascend to his current position, he had not done it out of kindness. Rather, Gao Xianji had secretly bribed him with a generous gift. This was the only stain on Gao Xianji's youth, and also the greatest stain. Bian Lingcheng had taken Gao Xianji's money, and in the end, he had gone around Fomin Linta to write 2 letters to the Holy Emperor, causing the Holy Emperor to take notice of Gao Xianji. Only then had Gao Xianji become a legend, but Bian Lingcheng's greed had seeped into his bones. Based on what Wang Chong had learned, Bian Lingcheng had been constantly extorting from Gao Xianji, and his appetite was only getting bigger and bigger. Gao Xianji's destruction of the Shi Kingdom was admittedly out of strategic necessity, but it was also inextricably linked to Bian Lingcheng's demands. The two sides had allied on the basis of profit, and parted on the basis of profit. Chapter 1228. When Wang Chong had learned of this matter, he had been extremely conflicted. In the history of the empire, Gao Xianji had made many mistakes, but he was loyal to the Tang dynasty. No matter what, such a great general should not have died at the hands of such a lowly person. Moreover, Wang Chong only needed a glance to understand what was going on. Not long ago, Wang Chong and Gao Xianji had worked together to obtain 1.2 billion taels of gold from the Caliph of Arabia, together with the 700 million taels of gold that they had obtained from the Arabian Empire after their victory at Khorasan. The Tang dynasty army now possessed an astronomical amount of wealth. Someone of Bian Lingcheng's personality would assuredly be like a shark that had smelled blood. He had volunteered to take on a mission and run all the way to Khorasan. Young Marquis. As Wang Chong was thinking, Bian Lingcheng was all smiles as he walked up to greet Wang Chong. There was none of that arrogant attitude from before. If Wang Chong hadn't heard it before, he would have believed them to be two completely different people. Slap. Just as Bian Lingcheng was grinning from ear to ear, a slap suddenly landed on his face without warning. Wang Chong's slap had left Bian Lingcheng dumbfounded, and Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, and the others in the hall were even more shocked. Bian Lingcheng was truly a eunuch, but he was one of the favored people of the Holy Emperor, and he also had the authority of a supervising envoy. This was a power that the Holy Emperor had bestowed upon him, so that he could oversee the world and understand the situation on the border. Gao Xianji had been restrained by Bian Lingcheng and treated him with such respect. Part of the reason was that Bian Lingcheng had been able to blackmail him, but the main reason was also because of this. Bian Lingcheng was no ordinary eunuch. You hit me. Bian Lingcheng clutched his swollen face, his entire body stupefied as he stared at Wang Chong. Even Gao Xianji had to be polite to him, and had never dared to treat him like this. Hee, I heard a fly buzzing outside just now. I'm just swatting a fly for my lord. Is there a problem? Wang Chong smiled and pinched Bian Lingcheng's cheek. Gao Xianji was a Hu and had no foundation in the capital, so he had always been patient and accommodating. But Wang Chong was different. He came from a clan of ministers and generals, had a solid foundation, and was also Qixi Protector General, protected by the King of Song and Duke Jiao. At the same time, he was the young Marquis personally appointed by the Holy Emperor, a true disciple of the Son of Heaven. To be honest, Wang Chong wasn't really afraid of Bian Lingqing. The power in Bian Lingqing's hands was completely useless in front of Wang Chong. Bian Lingqing's face alternated between green and red. No matter how slow he was, he could tell that Wang Chong was indirectly cursing the locust tree. It was obvious that Wang Chong had heard what he had said to Gao Xianji in the room. Bian Lingqing might have been arrogant and bossy in front of an important figure like Gao Xianji, but in front of the young marquis like Wang Chong, he couldn't muster up any of his authority. Ha ha ha, well beaten, well beaten. To everyone's surprise, just when everyone was worried that Bian Lingqing would fly into a rage, a burst of laughter resounded through the air. Not only did Bian Lingqing not get angry, he even bowed to Wang Chong. Now that you mention it, this one must thank the young marquis. Bian Lingqing waved his sleeve, his expression relaxed and carefree. It was like he had not been the one who had been slapped just now, but someone else. Even though Wang Chong knew that this was a treacherous eunuch who hid a dagger in his smile, and had a benevolent face but a venomous heart, he couldn't help but feel some respect for him. With this sort of personality and methods, it was no wonder he had the ability to oppose Fomin Linta, and force the Anxi Protector General Fomin Linta to Qixi for 10-some years. Wang Chong, Gao Xianji and Feng Changqing felt even more uneasy at this sight. They had worked with Bian Lingqing for 10-some years, and were extremely familiar with him. The more respectful and submissive he was, the more difficult it was to deal with him. Marquis, this is Bian Lingqing, eunuch Bian. He is a favorite of His Majesty, and holds the token of the Saint Emperor in his hands. His Majesty has personally appointed him as the general of the palace gates. At the same time, he is also the chief steward of the palace gates. Even eunuch Gao favors him greatly. Cheng Qianli couldn't help but interject. A general's blood was always hot, and they were straightforward and reckless. Even if they crashed into a mountain, they wouldn't turn back. But one also had to see who their opponent was. No one knew why Wang Chong was so hostile to Bian Lingqing in their first meeting. Bian Lingqing was no ordinary eunuch, and the fact that he had been conferred the title of gate supervisor by the Holy Emperor was enough to show how favored he was. It was extremely rare for a eunuch to be conferred the title of general, and it was not without reason that the entire Anxi Protectorate army treated Bian Lingqing with such respect. Whether it was Gao Xianji, Feng Changqing, or Cheng Qianli, they were all worried that Wang Chong would offend such a great eunuch in his muddle-headedness. But before Cheng Qianli could finish speaking, Wang Chong waved his hand and gave him a reassuring look. It was one thing for Bian Lingqing to be so arrogant in front of the Anxi Protectorate army, but if he still had such thoughts in front of Wang Chong, he would truly be seeking death. Haha, Lord Director has worked hard and performed many meritorious deeds, taking great care of the Anxi Protectorate army. Once I return to the capital and see eunuch Gao, I will definitely give a good account of Lord Director's achievements to Lord Gao. Wang Chong faintly smiled at Bian Lingqing. Whoosh! Bian Lingqing instantly paled at Wang Chong's words. The words eunuch Gao seemed to possess some sort of magical power. Although the generals in the outside world rarely interacted with him, and many had never even heard of him, in the imperial palace, especially among the eunuchs, this name had an extraordinary intimidating effect. This was because this was the true minister of the imperial palace, the head of all the eunuchs. Even someone like Bian Lingqing would feel deep apprehension upon hearing this name. Wang Chong was the young marquis personally appointed by the Holy Emperor, a true disciple of the Son of Heaven. But Bian Lingqing had not expected him to be so capable. From what he said, it seemed like he could meet with First Minister of the Imperial Palace, eunuch Gao, at any time. More importantly, Gao Lishur was his direct superior. "Milord, this lowly one did not mean that. Milord and Lord Gao have worked hard and performed great deeds for the empire. How could this lowly one dare to disrespect you?" Bian Lingqing's face was ashen, his head drooping even lower. He no longer dared to show any arrogance or disrespect. "Lord Bian, didn't you bring an imperial edict? Hurry and announce it." Wang Chong stared at the imperial edict on Bian Lingqing's back. A eunuch like Bian Lingqing was assuredly a treacherous official, but just like Li Jingzhong at 5th Prince Li Heng's side, after intimidating them, Wang Chong did not intend to immediately kill them. Whether it was Li Jingzhong, the future treacherous minister, or Bian Lingcheng, the inspector general, as long as they were used well, they could have positive effects. The only thing that needed to be done was to eliminate them before they could wreak havoc. One's appearance came from one's heart, and one's heart was filled with gold. No one was set in stone, and it depended on how one used it. Thus, Feng Dai was a treacherous official of the Sui dynasty who deceived his superiors and subordinates. But after the Sui destroyed the Tang and established the Tang, he had become an illustrious and meritorious minister in the hands of the current Emperor Taizong. The young marquis speaks the truth. How could this one forget such an important matter? Bian Lingqing's face was slightly pale as he glanced in Wang Chang's direction, a fearful expression on his face. This time, he was truly a little afraid. Nearby, Gao Xianji, Feng Changqing, Cheng Qianli, and the other Anqi generals finally breathed a long sigh of relief at this sight. They had long ago noticed the imperial edict on Bian Lingqing's back, but Bian Lingqing had used it as a threat and refused to speak of the imperial edict, leaving Gao Xianji and the others helpless. In addition, although Bian Lingqing was greedy and loved money, he was still a benefactor to the Anqi Protectorate army. Moreover, Bian Lingqing had a special status. Since ancient times, how many eunuchs had been conferred the title of Inspector General by the Emperor? They were truly afraid that Wang Chong would not let this matter rest, and shed all pretense of cordiality with Bian Lingqing. Lord Bian, let me help you. On the side, Feng Changqing saw the opportunity and shot forward, his hands reaching out to help Bian Lingqing remove the imperial edict from his back. Such a small action immediately eased the atmosphere in the hall by a lot. Bian Lingqing chuckled, instantly feeling much more natural. Everyone heed my command. Bian Lingqing didn't dare to look at Wang Chong as he unfurled the golden imperial edict in his hand. The five-clawed golden dragon on the imperial edict was faintly discernible, exuding a dignified and divine aura. Upon seeing this imperial edict, Gao Xianji, Feng Changqing, Cheng Qianli, and the other Anqi generals bowed. By the will of the heavens, the emperor decrees that Anqi Protector General Gao Xianji has persisted at Talas for several months, defeated more than 400,000 Arab soldiers, killed Ibak, Huashu Wuzong, and Daluan Ruozan, and commanded the army to break into Khorasan, achieving great feats for the Tang dynasty. Gao Xianji is specially promoted to Left Great General of the Golden Army, and made the Duke of Qi. He will enjoy an annual salary of 6,000 Dan, be bestowed with the amethyst dragon armor, 5,000 bushels of pearls, countless agate ornaments, and be given a duke's residence. Announce this to the world for all to admire and revere, so as to inspire the people of my Tang dynasty. Cheng Qianli is appointed Deputy Minister of the Imperial Censor, with an annual salary of 4,000 Dan, a golden scale armor, and 10,000 taels of gold. Feng Changqing is appointed Minister of the Left Guanglu, with an annual salary of 4,000 Dan, and 10,000 bushels of pearls. End of imperial decree. Bian Lingqing's expression was solemn, his somewhat shrill voice echoing through the hall. As soon as he finished speaking, all the Anqi generals in the reception hall began to grow excited. Duke of Qi. His Divine Majesty has bestowed the title of Duke of Qi upon Lord Protector General, and Left Great General of the Golden Army. This is a glory that has never happened before. In a flash, everyone in the hall was in an uproar. Duke. What sort of honor was this? Before the Battle of Talas, Gao Xianji had been made the prefectural Duke of Miyun. Chapter 1229. Lord Gao, congratulations. His Majesty is truly satisfied with you this time. Of all the great generals of the Tang dynasty in the last 10-some years, you are probably the only one who can be made a duke. Bian Lingqing put away the imperial decree, a smile on his face as he strode over to congratulate Gao Xianji. In addition, generals, the successive victories in these battles have greatly boosted the prestige of our Tang dynasty. The Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Personnel have already decided on your rewards. I trust that it won't be long before the Bureau of Military Personnel sends over your rewards. The imperial court had its own rules. The rewards for Gao Xianji, Cheng Qianli, and Feng Chongqing were decided by the Holy Emperor and announced to the world through imperial decrees. As for the other generals, the Bureau of Military Personnel could decide on them. Many thanks, my lord. Gao Xinji lowered his head and respectfully bowed. At the same time, he spread out his hands and took the imperial decree from Bian Lingqing's hands. Gao Xinji had never imagined that he would be made a duke after several major battles. But Gao Xinji quickly calmed down. Lord Bian, forgive Xinji for being so bold. But why is it that Protector General Wang Chong's reward still hasn't arrived? Gao Xinji raised his head and asked. Buzz. The reception hall fell silent as Gao Xinji spoke, everyone turning to Bian Lingqing and Wang Chong. In terms of merit, Wang Chong was the true hero. If not for him, Gao Xinji and the Anqi Protectorate army would have already died at Talas. Moreover, in the successive battles, whether at Talas or Khorasan, Wang Chong had been the true commander. In terms of merit, Wang Chong was probably far more meritorious than Gao Xinji. Ha ha ha, look at how nervous all of you are. The young Marquis is the new young war god of the Tang dynasty, and His Majesty deeply favors and trusts Marquis. How could His Majesty and the imperial court not know of his great achievements? But the young Marquis had rendered far too great a service this time. He had killed Arab war god Qutayba and wiped out 1 million Arab elites. This was a service that could not be surpassed. The ministers in the court, the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Personnel, the Prime Minister, and His Majesty are all having a headache over how to reward Marquis. Right now the debate in the court is quite intense. Marquis's reward won't be announced so soon, but it should be ready in a month or so. Bian Lingqing said with a smile on his face. This time, it was sincere, without the slightest bit of falsehood. He was truly afraid of Wang Chong. Wang Chong not only had an illustrious background and was favored and trusted by the Holy Emperor, but he also had a close relationship with Bian Lingqing's superior, eunuch Gao. He could order around Gao Xinji and hold on to his weakness, but he did not dare to do the same in front of Wang Chong. Hearing Bian Lingqing's words, the surrounding people immediately let out a long sigh of relief. Marquis, congratulations. Feng Chongqing suddenly stepped forward and respectfully bowed to Wang Chong. Marquis has rendered great service in this war, and even my lord was made Duke of Qi. Marquis is the true hero of this war. I am confident that the imperial court and His Majesty will reward Marquis even more handsomely. The Anqi generals in the hall all nodded in agreement. Feng Chongqing was correct. If even Gao Xinji, Anqi Protector General, was made Duke of Qi, the imperial court and His Majesty would reward Wang Chong even more handsomely. Congratulations, my lord. Lord Feng is correct. The imperial court will definitely reward my lord handsomely. The generals sincerely congratulated him. All of them were sincerely happy for Wang Chong. After all his efforts and sacrifices, he had finally been rewarded, and this was what Wang Chong deserved. Wang Chong only faintly smiled. He had never cared about being conferred a noble title. What he truly cared about was defeating Arabia and obtaining victory in Talas and Khorasan. Lord Bian, you must be tired from your long journey. Why don't you go and rest? Yuanqing, take Lord Bian and take good care of him. Gao Xinji waved his hand and ordered. Yes, my lord, Shi Yuanqing hurriedly replied. Then I'll have to trouble my lord. Bian Lingqing hurriedly said. Wang Chong did not speak, and Bian Lingqing could not grasp what he was thinking. Bian Lingqing could see Wang Chong's calm smile, and his heart immediately began to tremble in fear. He did not dare to remain here any longer. Qianli, you should go as well. Gao Xinji stared at Cheng Qianli and the other Anqi Protectorate army generals. A few moments later, only Gao Xinji, Feng Chongqing, and Wang Chong were left in the hall. Only then did Gao Xinji turn to Wang Chong said, Wang Chong, now that only the three of us are left, do you have anything you want to say? From the very start, Gao Xinji had noticed that Wang Chong seemed to want to say something to him, which was why he had sent the others away. After a pause, Gao Xinji continued, Wang Chong, you might not know but eunuch Bian He. How much money did he want from you? Before Gao Xinji could finish speaking, Wang Chong interrupted him. Gao Xinji and Feng Chongqing raised their heads in shock. only to see Wang Chong's profound gaze staring at them, as if seeing through all their secrets and thoughts. The hall immediately fell into an extremely strange silence. Neither of them had expected Wang Chong to say these words. The matter between Gao Xinji and Bian Lingqing had always been a secret, and very few people knew about it. How did you know? Gao Xinji sternly said. There's no wall in the world that doesn't have a crack. As long as one is willing to investigate, one can always find some clues. Milord's path to promotion is inextricably linked to that Bian Lingqing, Wang Chong flatly said. The two were silent for a very long time. After a long while, Gao Xinji raised his head and gave a long sigh. Since Lord Wang already knows, I won't hide it. When I was young, I let my emotions affect my decisions and made this mistake. For the next 10-some years, I've been restrained by it, and I've never been able to shake it off. As they recalled the past, Gao Xinji and Feng Changqing couldn't help but sigh. No one could avoid making mistakes when they were young. And Gao Xinji had also been young, and he had also been impulsive at times. Gao Xinji had prided himself on his martial arts and the art of war. But even though he had served under Tian Renwan and Fomin Linta for so long, even though he had made great contributions, he had never been given any important responsibilities. Left with no choice, the young Gao Xinji had used that move. But though he had become Anqi Protector General, it had also left behind countless consequences. How much money did Bian Lingqing ask for in the Battle of the Sure Kingdom? Wang Chong put his hands behind his back and got straight to the point. 6 million taels of gold. Feng Changqing's voice rang out at his ear. Buzz! Even Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes at this number. For the Battle of Talas, he had requested reinforcements from the imperial court. But the Bureau of Revenue had only given him 10 million taels of gold, and they had even hesitated for a very long time. But for the Battle of the Sure Kingdom, Bian Lingqing had asked for 6 million taels of gold, almost as much as what Wang Chong had spent on the Battle of Talas. And it had to be realized that Wang Chong had used this money to hire an army of nearly 100,000. Then what about this time? Wang Chong asked. Gao Xinji was quiet for a long time. It was Feng Changqing who answered once more. 80 million taels of gold. Bastard! Even though Wang Chong had prepared himself, he couldn't help but widen his eyes and pale at this number. 80 million taels of gold. Wang Chong and Gao Xinji had extorted 1.9 billion taels of gold from the Arabian Empire, and Bian Lingqing had clearly learned of this. So he had immediately asked for 80 million taels of gold. From 6 million to 80 million, Bian Lingqing's appetite had increased tenfold. If this continued, let alone Gao Xinji, not even Wang Chong would be able to satisfy this demand. His appetite was getting bigger and bigger, and if this continued, even giving Bian Lingqing all 1.9 billion taels of gold wouldn't be enough, and if Bian Lingqing's appetite wasn't satisfied, he would immediately turn on him. This bastard, how dare he? Does he really think that the money we extorted from Arabia is his private property? Wang Chong was rarely enraged, but he couldn't help but fly into a rage at Bian Lingqing's appetite. If I knew that he was so greedy, I would have killed him a moment ago. Wang Chong, you can't. Gao Xinji and Feng Changqing paled at these words. Bian Lingqing is the palace supervisor general, and he's also an emissary sent by His Divine Majesty. Killing him is equivalent to looking down on the Holy Emperor. 80 million taels of gold is just his words. There's no concrete evidence. If we recklessly kill an imperial clan chief steward, it will be extremely disadvantageous to Protector General and the entire Wang clan. With a powerful foe at our side, we can't lose our composure because of a lowly person like him. The two hurriedly advised. Wang Chong said nothing, but the rage in his eyes burned even brighter. He finally understood why Gao Xinji and Feng Changqing had invited him over. But not even the two of them had expected that Wang Chong knew more about their relationship with Bian Lingqing than they had imagined. Leave this matter to me. A eunuch dares to make use of the emperor's order. How dare he? Wang Chong's eyes spat fire. Wang Chong, you absolutely can't do this. Gao Xinji and Feng Changqing were so anxious that their faces paled. Milords, be at ease. I won't kill him. I have my own ways of dealing with eunuchs like him. Wang Chong calmly said as he glanced at the two. Although his heart was burning with rage, Wang Chong had not lost his mind. There was no need to use brute force to deal with a eunuch like Bian Lingcheng, a greedy person like Bian Lingcheng, especially one who had been the palace supervisor general for so many years, would definitely demand more than just Gao Xianji. There were bound to be other victims before and after Gao Xianji. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall. As long as Wang Chong could find an opening, no matter how capable Bian Lingcheng was, he wouldn't be able to escape his grasp. Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing looked at Wang Chong. Seeing that he didn't seem like he was going to act rashly and immediately kill Bian Lingcheng, they sighed in relief. After leaving the conference hall, Wang Chong quickly summoned Zhang Ke and sent a letter to Yang Hongchang of the Yang clan in the distant western regions. The Yang clan had been in the western regions for many years and had flourished with branches and leaves. If Bian Lingcheng had any information, then the Yang clan was the most suitable candidate. Chapter 1230. The king of Song was a member of the imperial family and possessed enormous influence in the capital, and behind Yang Zhao stood consort Taizhen. With consort Taizhen's influence and favor in the palace, it was far too easy for her to investigate a eunuch. Even though Bian Lingcheng was a general of the palace gates appointed by the Holy Emperor, he was still insignificant in front of the empress consort Taizhen. Wang Chong was confident that, whether in the court or on the border, someone as greedy as Bian Lingcheng would definitely leave behind many clues. Yang Hongchang's news came much faster than he had imagined. 3 days later, Wang Chong obtained the information he wanted. 10 days later, Wang Chong also received news from the king of Song and Yang Zhao. The king of Song did not ask a single question and delivered a detailed pile of information to Wang Chong. As Yang Zhao delivered the information, he also asked a few questions out of curiosity. As for why Wang Chong would investigate a eunuch, Yang Zhao was rather curious. But even so, the information he provided was more detailed than anyone else. "My lord, spare me. My lord, spare me." When Wang Chong slammed the pile of information in front of Bian Lingcheng, the third most treacherous eunuch in the history of the Tang dynasty immediately turned ashen and kneeled on the ground, banging his head on the ground. According to the rules of the imperial court, he should have left Khorasan long ago, after announcing the imperial decree. But because of his greed, Bian Lingcheng had been unable to obtain the 80 million taels of gold he wanted, so he had delayed his departure by 10 some days. He had originally believed that when he received the news, Gao Xianji had figured something out. He had never imagined that this would be the result. Looking at the pile of documents on the ground, Bian Lingcheng was terrified. He was on the verge of breaking down. Cold sweat immediately dripped from his forehead like rainwater. The information on it was all about his corruption and bribery, as well as his buying and selling of official positions. Some of the information was even clearer than Bian Lingcheng himself. It was only when he saw the information that he was jolted awake and began to memorize it. "Bian Lingcheng, you're a trifling eunuch, but you're relying on the token His Majesty gave you to commit crimes in the army, wantonly amassing wealth, and even daring to threaten an important official of the empire like the Anqi Protector General. Do you know that this alone is enough to cut you into 1,000 pieces? His death is not to be regretted." Wang Chong looked down from above with his hands behind his back. He looked coldly at Bian Lingcheng, who was kneeling in front of him. "Spare my life, lord. Spare my life." Bian Lingcheng was sweating profusely. He banged his head against the ground so hard that he didn't even realize that his forehead was bleeding. At this moment he felt a terrible fear. The evidence that Wang Chong had gathered was far too complete. Bian Lingcheng couldn't even find the words to refute or defend himself. Given Wang Chong's status, if he handed over this information he would be doomed. On account of the fact that you once secretly assisted Lord Gao, I'll spare your dog life for now. If I find out that you're still using that matter to threaten Lord Gao, still extorting, buying and selling official positions, the only thing left for you is death. Given my abilities, you should know that no matter where you run, I will know where you are." Wang Chong coldly said, "This lowly one understands, this lowly one understands." My lord, be at ease. Even if this lowly one had 100,000 guts, this lowly one would never dare to threaten Lord Gao. Bien Lingqing's face was covered in fear and cold sweat. Very good. Take these things. Wang Chong pointed at a wooden box at the side. Bien Lingqing raised his head in shock. This lowly one wouldn't dare. This lowly one wouldn't dare. How could Bien Lingqing dare to take Wang Chong's things at this time? If I tell you to take them, then take them. Wang Chong coldly said, a faint chill in his eyes. Bien Lingqing's heart trembled. How could he dare to say anything else? He walked to the side, lowered his head, and took the wooden box from the table. Aren't you going to open it and take a look? Wang Chong indifferently said, staring at Bien Lingqing. Yes, yes, yes. Bien Lingqing opened the wooden box with a clap. When he saw what was inside, he was struck dumb. The wooden box contained nothing but a thick stack of gold yuan certificates. Each gold yuan certificate had an extremely large denomination. A rough estimate was that there were at least 5 or 6 million taels of gold yuan certificates inside. Bien Lingqing raised his head and looked at Wang Chong dumbfounded. This is 6 million taels of gold. Take it. I saw that you once helped Lord Gao and performed a meritorious service for the country. This money will be enough for you to eat for a very long time. If you dare to stretch out your hand and ask for more, you will definitely be beheaded. Wang Chong coldly said. Bien Lingqing broke out in a cold sweat. What else would he dare to say? Many thanks, my lord. Go. Wang Chong waved his hand. Bien Lingqing had believed that he would die, but not only had he not died, he had even obtained such a great benefit. He instantly felt like he had escaped from death, and did not dare to linger. But after taking a few steps, Bien Lingqing hesitated for a moment and suddenly stopped. What, is there something else? Wang Chong coldly said. This lowly one would not dare. Bien Lingqing trembled, fear in his eyes. But this lowly one has remembered something else that I do not know if I should say. It has to do with Marquis. Bien Lingqing emphasized the last sentence. Speak. Wang Chong waved his hand unconcerned. When this lowly one was in the capital, I heard a few things. Although Marquis has rendered great service in the western regions, and the entire imperial court is discussing how to reward Marquis, the Confucians have some complaints about Marquis. Bien Lingqing said. Oh. Wang Chong's eyebrows rose, but he quickly relaxed. In the Battle of Talas, the civil officials and generals had fought fiercely, and the Confucian civil officials, led by the Grand Preceptor, had fiercely opposed the war. Moreover, for Wang Chong's sake, his grandfather had even personally stepped forward to clash with the Grand Preceptor in the court. Now that the imperial court was going to wantonly reward the Wang clan, it was normal for the Confucians to object. I understand. You were kind enough to tell me about this matter. You may leave. Wang Chong waved his hand. Whether or not the information provided by a treacherous official like Bien Lingqing was useful, the fact that he was willing to tell him about this matter showed that he had not spent 6 million taels of gold in vain. Yes. Bien Lingqing bowed and quickly withdrew, leaving only Wang Chong in the hall. Lord Protector General, why did you still give him 6 million taels of gold, when you clearly had something to use against him? A voice suddenly rang out from behind, followed by a series of footsteps. Feng Chongqing and Go Xianji walked out from behind a curtain at the back of the hall. The two of them looked in the direction that Bien Lingqing had left in, their eyes flashing with light. The two of them had clearly seen the entire conversation between Wang Chong and Bien Lingqing, and they had originally believed that given Wang Chong's personality, Bien Lingqing was doomed. They hadn't expected that Wang Chong would not only overturn Bien Lingqing, but also give him a sum of money. This was completely different from the impression they had of Wang Chong. Treacherous officials have their uses. Although Bien Lingqing is greedy beyond measure, there's no need to doubt his abilities. As long as we can intimidate his ambitions, we can make use of him. Who knows when he might be of use? Besides, I have a plan that requires his use. Wang Chong indifferently said. No matter how greedy Bien Lingqing was, he had still created Gao Xianji. If not for him, the empire would have lost an Anshi war god. From this point of view, Bien Lingqing was still somewhat useful. At the very least, He had been able to recognize Gao Xianji among so many people, and even resist the threat of Fomenlinta to recommend him to the Holy Emperor. This was also one of the reasons Wang Chong had spared his life. Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing were silent. Wang Chong had not said what the plan was, and Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing had tacitly agreed not to ask. Time passed in the blink of an eye, and Bian Lingqing left with the 6 million taels of gold yuan certificates. All of Karasin returned to normal, and Feng Chongqing and Wang Chong's plans were carried out in an orderly manner. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Reporting. In the early morning, a heaven-shaking roar came from outside Karasin. In the distance, a cloud of dust could be seen as a horseman rode over a bridge over the Tigris River and into Karasin. Reporting to Milord, an Arab army has been discovered 30 li from the city. There are more than 500,000 of them, and they are currently approaching Karasin. The messenger entered the hall and immediately kneeled on the ground panting. What? The Arabs are coming again. When they heard the news, the rebel army leaders in the Great Hall all stood up, all of them extremely excited. From the Battle of Talas to the Battle of Karasin, the Arabian Empire had lost more than 1 million soldiers. No one had expected that once the ice and snow had melted, the Arabs would return so quickly. My lord, I will immediately gather the men. Let's give them another vicious lesson. My lord, I request to attack and deal with the Arabs. The rebel leaders turned to Wang Chong, the leader of the coalition army, who was seated on the throne. There's no need. Wang Chong faintly smiled and slightly waved his hand under the flabbergasted gazes of the crowd. It's just a few 100,000 Arab soldiers. I've already taken care of everything. Bahram, is it ready? My lord, everything has been prepared. All soldiers can enter combat readiness at any time to annihilate the invading enemy. A deep voice resounded through the hall. Bahram stood nearby like a statue of a god, his body exuding a powerful aura. Very good. Then let's begin. Wang Chong's eyes flashed with an intimidating light as he placed his hands on the armrests of his throne and slowly stood up. At that moment, the earth quaked and the mountains swayed as a majestic energy erupted from his body. War could break out at any moment. All was quiet outside Karasin, the only sounds being the gurgling of the Tigris River and the whispering of the wind. After some time, rumbling could be heard in the distance. It was barely noticeable at the start, but it only took a few moments for it to reach an astonishing level. Look over there. A voice suddenly came from the walls of Talas, shattering the silence. A moment later, a black tide surged toward the city from the horizon. Chapter 1231. Boom! The army came closer and closer like a tide. In just a moment, they had completely entered everyone's field of vision. An army numbering in the hundreds of thousands was like a tiger. And even though they had clashed with the Arabs many times, this aura was still frightening. And from the powerful energy seeping out of the army, Wang Chong could tell that the Arab army had gathered even more powerful governors than before. Attack! At the front of the army, an Arab governor with an aura as vast as the sea unsheathed his sword and pointed it at the majestic city of Talas. Kill! With this order, the 2 carriages of Arab cavalry transformed into a flood of steel that swept past the Arab governor and into the distance. At that moment, the earth was silent, and the entire world lost its color. After a long period of preparation, the Arabs finally gathered another army and launched an attack on the Karasin coalition army. Boom boom boom. 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 1,000 feet. Just as they reached the banks of the Tigris River, a massive black metal bridge rose up from the Arab camp, crossing several dozen feet before landing on the other side of the Tigris River. Following a series of earth-shattering battle cries, one warhorse after another quickly stepped onto the iron bridge and charged towards the opposite shore. The neighing of horses, the clattering of armors, and the shouts of battle rang out. In an instant the atmosphere became somber. 1, 2, 3, 4. As the sturdy black iron bridges landed on the opposite bank, a wide path quickly appeared on the Tigris River. Tens of thousands of warhorses neighed and surged forward. 500 paces, 400 paces, 300 paces. the quaking of the earth intensified, but the walls of Talas remained motionless. 150 steps, 130 steps, 100 steps. The distance was getting shorter and shorter, and just when the Arab soldiers were preparing to fire their chains up the walls, the situation suddenly changed. Get ready! A resounding roar cut through the air like a sharp sword, shattering the silence of Khorasan. With this roar, the silent walls of Khorasan suddenly began to clatter and clatter. This clatter was like a tide, one after another. This unique sound made all the Arab generals uneasy. A moment later, under everyone's shocked gazes, the walls of Khorasan began to open up, revealing tens of thousands of massive metal machines. At the very front of these machines were sharp crossbows that shone with a dazzling cold light in the morning light. Ballisti! Suddenly, a panicked voice resounded through the air. Some soldier who had participated in the Battle of Talas immediately recognized the gap. These were the ballisti of the Tang dynasty that had struck fear into the hearts of the Arab cavalry. In the Battle of Talas, just 5,000 Tang ballisti had been enough to give the hundreds of thousands of Arab soldiers nightmarish memories. And now, more than 10,000 Tang ballisti had emerged from the gap in the walls of Khorasan. Even the high walls of Khorasan were covered in the seemingly invincible Tang dynasty ballisti. Tens of thousands of Tang dynasty ballisti had transformed Khorasan into a fortress armed to the teeth. This was an existence that could make even the most resolute of Arab cavalry crumble. Retreat! The Arab horsemen who had participated in the Battle of Talas immediately began to flee the battlefield. Their reaction was very fast, but it was still too slow. Before these soldiers could get very far, boom boom boom, long ballista bolts were fired from the walls of Khorasan, like a swarm of locusts. Boom! 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 Ah! Screams and booms filled the air as tens of thousands of soldiers outside Khorasan, caught off guard, were nailed to the ground by ballista bolts along with their horses. Release! 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 On the high walls, Suhanshan stood like a god, his sword rising and falling again and again. At this moment, Suhanshan's eyes were cold and his expression aloof. He was like the god of death of the underworld, proclaiming the fate of the Arabs below the walls. Boom boom boom. Wave after wave of ballista bolts rained down on the Arab army on the eastern bank of the Tigris River, dealing them a destructive blow. In just 5 waves, the vast expanse of the battlefield from the Tigris River to the walls of Khorasan was littered with corpses and rivers of blood. An army of 50 to 60,000 men was instantly annihilated. Cold, fear, trembling. This hellish scene that had taken place in less than a second made all the Arab cavalry on the western bank of the Tigris River feel like they had been plunged into an icehouse. The tens of thousands of Tang dynasty ballisti, forming a dreadful nightmare. Everyone felt like they were going to stop breathing. But what was even more chilling was yet to come. Whoosh! Like a fierce gale, countless banners suddenly appeared on the walls of Khorasan, like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. Beneath the war banners were countless figures that occupied every corner of Khorasan's field of vision. The tightly shut gates of Khorasan were suddenly flung open, and countless soldiers of the coalition army surged out. 100,000, 200,000 countless soldiers poured out of the city. At a glance, the number of coalition soldiers in the city was on par with the Arab cavalry outside. Not only that, as the coalition soldiers poured out, many Tang dynasty ballisti were also transported out of the city. Let's go! Let's go! All the Arabs were dumbstruck by this sight. They had originally believed that the Arabs had the advantage in numbers, but the situation was completely different from what they had imagined. In a flash, the courage they had felt when they had set out vanished. Before the battle had even begun, the morale of the hundreds of thousands of Arab cavalry had already plummeted to rock bottom. Hung Long, the army was defeated like a landslide. The first to lose their morale and run away were the cavalry at the back of the army. Then, all of the cavalry looked terrified and retreated even faster than when they had come. Clang clang clang. The Arab generals, fearing that Khorasan would pursue them, unsheathed their swords and swiftly cut down the cavalry on the western bank of the Tigris River, before fleeing with the rest of the army. Bang! All the soldiers on the eastern bank of the Tigris River roared with laughter at this sight. Not so long ago, the Arabian Empire, which had been unparalleled in siege strategy, had finally had such a day. Before they could even get close, they had been utterly routed, the entire line crumbling before the morale of the coalition army. Don't chase a cornered enemy. Let them go. With this lesson, I'm confident that they won't dare to attack us for a very long time. On the high walls, Wang Chong faintly smiled, his expression composed and composed. He exuded the aura of a strategist who could determine victory from 1,000 li away. It was like there was nothing in the world that he could not predict. Preparedness leads to success, and unpreparedness leads to failure. I very much like my lord's words. The Arabs believed that their comeback would allow them to wash away their shame, but alas, they had no idea that their actions were all within my lord's calculations. Alas, the Tigris River is outside the city. Otherwise, I would have never let go of this chance, and would have pursued them all the way. Bahram, standing next to Wang Chong, couldn't help but chuckle as he watched the Arabs retreat. Boom! With Wang Chong and Bahram's orders, a horn blared through the city, and all the pursuing soldiers immediately sounded the horn to retreat. At the same time, they began to clean up the battlefield and retrieve the precious ballista bolts. After several months of managing Khorasan, Wang Chong had transported tens of thousands of ballistae and nearly 1 million ballista bolts to this strategic fortress. This was the most important part of Wang Chong's management of Khorasan, and now, everything was finally being used. Bang! As the army withdrew, Khorasan erupted in heaven-shaking cheers. All the residents knew the result of this battle, and were in high spirits. A bunch of useless things. At the same time, in the distant Baghdad, the Caliph of Arabia received the news from the front lines. Bang! A majestic storm of energy erupted from the body of the supreme ruler of Arabia, causing the entire Arab imperial palace to tremble. In the imperial palace, all the maids, guards, and even the ministers, generals, and nobles were sent flying like broken kites in the face of this unstoppable force, crashing into the ground and walls around them. Some of the weaker maids and guards even fainted on the spot. Your Majesty, looking at the furious caliph in the hall, everyone was filled with fear. They didn't even dare to wipe the blood off their faces as they knelt on the ground. We have the world's largest empire, the largest elite army, the largest number of governors and great generals, and countless generals. Do you think we can't even deal with the puny young marquis of the Eastern world? Mutassim III was on the verge of exploding from rage. From the moment he had ascended to the throne, Arabia had always been successful in every endeavor. Conquer as soon as you see was a true example of Mutassim III. Countless powerful empires had been reduced to ashes by the Arab armies and hooves, forced to kneel and submit. But when they ran into the armies of the Tang dynasty, everything came to a screeching halt. In just half a year, 3 large-scale battles had all ended in defeat. And this was only one of the armies of the Tang dynasty in the east. If the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains mobilized all its forces, would he be able to escape from Baghdad? Your Majesty, it is not that we are too weak, but that our opponents are too strong. Khorasan has prepared tens of thousands of Tang dynasty ballistae and hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Chapter 1232. Scram! 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 The Caliph had said the word scram 3 times, his face twisted and ashen, his entire being seething with rage. No matter what the reason was, it was absolutely unacceptable to him. When they saw that Mutassim III's eyes were bloodshot, and that he was like a ferocious beast that chose its prey, everyone was horrified. How could they dare to say anything? All of them had faces full of terror, as they hurriedly retreated out of the hall. In just a short while the entire hall was empty. Apart from Mutassim III, there was no one else. Bastard! 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 Mutassim III stood in front of the table, his eyes fixed on the outside of the palace gate. His fists were clenched, his chest heaving like bellows. Although the Arabs had only lost 60,000 soldiers in the first battle of the spring, hundreds of thousands of soldiers had actually fled. This was even more unacceptable to him than the defeat of the 700,000 soldiers in the Battle of Khorasan and the deaths of 500,000. This also meant that the Arabian Empire was powerless to deal with the newly established Sassanid dynasty and its allied army. To Mu'tasim III, retreating without putting up a fight was an unprecedented humiliation in his life. High Priest, am I supposed to just swallow this insult? Does such a huge empire really have no way to deal with these Easterners? The Caliph clenched his teeth as he finally couldn't help but shout. It was quiet behind him. Apart from the Khalifa's voice, there was no other sound. It was as if only a moment had passed, but also as if countless centuries had passed. Finally, an old voice came from behind the Khalifa. It was just a single defeat. Why does your majesty need to take it to heart? Light and shadow flickered behind the Caliph, and an elderly figure wearing a black robe and wielding a scepter of supreme divine might slowly walked out of the shadows of the hall. As he walked, his black robe swayed slightly, producing a rustling sound that sounded like the wails of countless sandworms dying tragically. However, there was no sound coming from this figure. It was as if he was a ghost that had walked out of the darkness. At this moment, the only person in the entire empire who could appear so close to the Caliph in his fury was that mysterious high priest. We cannot endure this. What a great humiliation. I must gather the entire army of the empire and fight to the death with the Tang dynasty, completely destroy Khorasan and all the infidels of the east. Khalifa's eyes were bloodshot as he let out an agitated roar. His robes also began to flutter intensely under the strong wind, emitting a sharp whistling sound like blades cutting through the air. Don't worry, your majesty. It's just a small group of Tang people. There's no need to get angry over them. Moreover, the problem that your majesty is worried about will be solved soon. Unlike the enraged caliph, the high priest's expression was calm, and he appeared to be extremely calm. His wise eyes seemed to be able to see through all the secrets in the world. Upon hearing the high priest's words, the caliph's body trembled violently. As if realizing something, he turned his head abruptly. High priest, what is the meaning of this? There was a hidden meaning in the high priest's words. Those words did not seem to have been spoken casually. Haha, your majesty, the weather has changed. What your majesty hopes for will happen soon. The high priest faintly smiled, but he did not explain. The caliph stood there in a daze, many thoughts flitting through his mind. He had no idea what he was thinking about, but in a flash, the rage in his chest greatly dissipated. The Arab assault had been pushed back once more, causing the people of Khorasan to rejoice. Unlike in the last few battles, the Khorasanians had relied on their own strength to force the Arabs into retreat. This meant that Khorasan and the newly established Sassanid dynasty now had the ability to protect themselves in front of the Arabs. Countless Khorasani took to the streets, cheering and jumping in joy. Time slowly passed and soon night had fallen. In his room, Wang Chong was in the middle of reading through official documents. The battle during the day was completely within Wang Chong's expectations. The 10,000 ballistae and 1 million ballista bolts from the Chishi armory were enough to deal with any enemy. Even if an enemy army of 1 million came from outside the city, each ballista bolt would only need to hit one person to completely wipe them out. This was also why the Tang dynasty had not been stingy with these precious ballista bolts in the previous battles. Each of these ballista bolts was extremely expensive, costing 100 taels of gold. Now 1 million ballista bolts would cost 100 million taels of gold. Not even Wang Chong would dare to recklessly use them. But after extorting more than 1 billion taels of gold from the Arab caliph, this was insignificant. Even if the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Revenue questioned him, Wang Chong could take out several 100 million taels of gold to shut the mouths of the officials. With so much wealth, no matter how expensive the ballista bolts were, it was nothing to Wang Chong. This was also why he dared to use so many ballistae and ballista bolts in Khorasan. As time passed, Wang Chong's mind was completely immersed in these documents. The larger the allied army was, the more trivial matters would be involved, and Feng Chongqing alone would not be able to take care of all of them. But gradually, Wang Chong began to sense that something was wrong. Unbeknownst to him, The noise outside the window had gradually become rowdy, and as time passed, not only did the noise not weaken, it became louder and louder. In the end, there were even fireworks, firecrackers, and the cheers of the crowd that only existed in the Central Plains. What's going on here? Wang Chong put down his brush and slightly frowned. He had been in Khorasan for several months now, but he had never encountered such a situation. Just as he was feeling bewildered, a series of rapid footsteps approached, followed by a series of hurried knocks on the door. "My lord, General Bahram invites Sir to participate in the Fire God Festival." Fire God Festival? In the room, Wang Chong raised an eyebrow in surprise. "The great general said that Sir will know once you go," the guard outside the door said. Wang Chong was getting more and more suspicious, but he also knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of this guard. So he stood up, pushed open the door and left. Bang bang bang. The moment he opened the door, some massive fireworks soared into the sky, creating a dazzling display of fireworks. Wang Chong had already sensed that something was different from inside the room, but only after walking out the door did he realize just how lively Khorasan was. Wang Chong stood in the doorway of his room and looked around. All over Khorasan, bonfires were blazing everywhere, the intense light of which soared into the sky and illuminated the night sky. In the past, Khorasan would have been deathly still, all the people asleep, but now it was a sea of joy. Khorasan was so crowded that not even Wang Chong knew how many people were on the streets, cheering and celebrating. What's going on here? Wang Chong's eyes widened. In all his time in Khorasan, he had never encountered such a situation. Not even Wang Chong knew what was going on. "General Wang, over here." Just as he was feeling confused, a familiar voice entered his ears. Wang Chong turned his head and saw that Bahram, dressed in a fiery red robe, was standing in the firelight with several rebel leaders. Their faces were ruddy and brimming with smiles. It seemed like they were in a very good mood. "Great General, what's going on in the city? And what is the Fire God Festival?" Wang Chong strode over and asked. "Ha ha ha, the Fire God Festival is the festival of light. We Khorasani worship the Fire God, the God of light. This is our most important festival of the year. But ever since the Sassanid royal capital was conquered, and all the Khorasani were enslaved and put under the control of the Arabs, we have never held another Fire God Festival. But this time, the Sassanid dynasty has been restored and has defeated Arabia twice in a row. All the people have been greatly encouraged and decided to resume the Fire God Festival. We thought for a very long time, and finally decided to go along with everyone's wishes. General Wang, you are the benefactor of our Sassanid dynasty, and all the people of Khorasani. Without you, the Sassanid dynasty would have never seen the light of day again, and all the people of Khorasani would have to live under the terror of the Arabs. Thus, no matter what, you must participate in this Fire God Festival with us." Bahram faintly smiled as he issued an invitation. As Wang Chong was hesitating, he heard the urging of the rebel leaders. "My lord, let's go. Even Lord Gao and the others are participating. You're the only one left." "That's right, my lord. Everyone is waiting for you." After a few moments of hesitation, Wang Chong finally nodded. "Okay." He followed Bahram and the others into the streets, where countless bonfires dotted the streets. Tens of thousands of figures surged out like a river, dancing and singing around the bonfires as they cheered. There were men and women, young and old in this cheering crowd, all of them brimming with joy and excitement from the depths of their hearts. Even Wang Chong was unwittingly infected by this crowd. At this moment, the crowd noticed Bahram and Wang Chong and let out a burst of enthusiastic cheers. Boom! A voluptuous and sexy Khorasani girl parted the crowd, gave Wang Chong a charming smile, and then placed a fire-red garland of flowers around Wang Chong's neck. Deafening cheers and whistles rang out, and even the spectating Bahram couldn't help but laugh. "Haha, this is a tradition of our Sassanid dynasty. If an unfamiliar guest comes to participate in the Fire God Festival with us, we will offer them fire-red garlands as a sign of welcome and respect. But if an unmarried girl offers it, it means that she's expressing her love." Bahram's words made Wang Chong's cheeks feel like they were on fire, And all the other rebel leaders around him also began to laugh. The Sassanid girl who had offered the garland of flowers to Wang Chong danced around Wang Chong while boldly throwing flirtatious glances at him. That's right, I forgot to tell you. The girls of our Sassanid dynasty are completely different from those of the Central Plains. Once they fall in love with someone, they will take the initiative to attack. Milord's martial arts are unparalleled, and you're also unmarried. Many girls of our Sassanid dynasty admire you. Chapter 1234. Wang Chong scanned the crowd and saw that countless charming girls were looking at him, the fiery rings of flame in their hands and their eyes scorching. Wang Chong quickly looked away, an embarrassed expression on his face. If not for the fact that Bahram and the rebel army were at his side, Wang Chong suspected that they would all rush forward and, like the Sassanid girls at the start, offer up their rings of flowers and dance around him. Bahram could also see Wang Chong's embarrassment. He suddenly took 2 steps forward and whispered into the ear of the first voluptuous Sassanid girl. Okay, go. Bahram waved his hand, and the Sassanid girl glanced meaningfully at Wang Chong. Then, like a gust of wind, she spun and leaped back into the crowd. Wang Chong didn't know what she said to the other girls, but the other girls who had been prepared to offer their halo of flame glanced at Wang Chong with some reluctance, before turning around and blending back into the laughing crowd. Great General, what did you say to them? Wang Chong couldn't help but be curious at this sight. He turned to Bahram. Haha, you'll know in a little while. Bahram faintly smiled, an unfathomable look on his face. No matter what, without the passionate entanglement of these girls, Wang Chong breathed a long sigh of relief. Let's go. Lord Gao and the others are still waiting for us. Bahram whispered into Wang Chong's ear. Oh. Wang Chong was very curious, but he didn't ask any questions and followed Bahram. On this night, Khorasan was destined to be a city that never sleeps. Bonfires and cheering crowds could be seen everywhere. But gradually, Wang Chong began to notice something different. Although all the people of Khorasan were celebrating, they were all gathering in a certain direction according to a certain pattern. The further they went, the larger the bonfires, and the more people there were. We're here. After a long time, passing by countless people, Wang Chong finally saw the center of tonight's celebration. It was a huge temple that had just been built a few months ago. Looking from afar, it was brightly lit. The huge flames reached the heavens and the earth, far surpassing all the other bonfires. A sea of people had gathered around the flames, numbering in the tens of thousands. Wang Chong could also see many Khorasani warriors, rebels, and Tang dynasty warriors. This is our newly built Fire Divine Palace, and it is also the center of tonight's celebration. Without waiting for Wang Chong to speak, Bahram pointed forward and explained. Wang Chong slightly nodded and followed Bahram's finger. Sure enough, he saw an enormous statue of a god several dozen feet tall, its entire body covered in flames. That must be the fire god that Bahram spoke of, Wang Chong quietly said to himself. He looked down and saw several familiar figures at the foot of the fire god statue. Gao Xinji, Feng Changqing, and the others. Wang Chong faintly smiled and quickly walked over. Lord Wang, you finally come. We've been waiting for you for a long time. Gao Xinji, Feng Changqing, and the others also saw Wang Chong. Feng Changqing turned his head and smiled. His face was ruddy, and it was clear that he was particularly happy in this festive atmosphere. The Fire God Festival here is truly not bad. Even in the Central Plains, it's rare to see hundreds of thousands of people celebrating together. To be able to participate in this celebration with them makes our trip to Khorasan not in vain. Gao Xinji also faintly smiled. His eyes were focused forward, and he appeared to be completely entranced. Wang Chong ascended the steps and followed Gao Xinji's gaze. In the center of the holy temple, around the burning statue of the fire god, a group of enchanting and sexy Sassanid maidens were dancing and singing. All these maidens were like stars surrounding the moon, surrounding a graceful maiden, with a golden bracelet on her arm, and a veil of beads on her face. Unlike the other maidens, this veiled maiden exuded a dense and noble aura, as dazzling as the bright moon in the sky. Her skin was as white as jade, even brighter than the moon. Anyone who glanced at her couldn't help but feel their heart waver, deeply enchanted by her beauty. Adia! Wang Chong only needed a glance to be flabbergasted. The dazzling maiden in the center of the holy temple was Princess Adia of the Sassanid dynasty. As Wang Chong looked over, he saw that Adia was wearing several strange metal devices on her body, all of them blazing with flames. As Adia danced and spun, the flames on her arms and body also began to spin, making Adia seem like a fairy. This is a tradition of our imperial household. Each year, the Fire God Festival must be personally presided over by the imperial household. Bahram's voice came from behind him as he ascended the steps and walked up from behind Wang Chong. Oh! Wang Chong's eyes flashed as he gave a slight nod to the fairy-like Adia. This was his first time participating in the Fire God Festival, and also his first time experiencing such exotic dances and celebrations. Everything gave him a novel feeling, completely different from the festivals of the Central Plains. Bang! As he was thinking, the celebratory crowd around the Fire God Temple exploded with heaven-shaking cheers. Wang Chong raised his head. At the center of the divine temple, Adia had stopped at some point, and a Sassanid general in splendid attire suddenly walked up to the altar. Under everyone's gaze, he respectfully handed over an exquisite silver mask inlaid with red gems, and placed it on Adia's face. At this moment, Sassanid Princess Adia's beauty had not diminished in the slightest. On the contrary, it had added a noble and mysterious aura. The cheers had stopped at some point. Adia stood there, her mesmerizing eyes slowly sweeping across the crowd, as if she was looking for something. While Wang Chong was flabbergasted, Adia's body trembled as her enchanting eyes locked onto him, a hint of joy in them. A moment later, in a gust of wind, Adia moved, walking straight toward Wang Chong. Wang Chong had not expected this, but before Wang Chong could react, Adia stood in front of Wang Chong, a tender look in her eyes as she extended a slender, snow-white hand. "General, can you dance with me?" Adia's voice was gentle and pleasant, suffused with a heart-tugging charm that made it impossible to refuse. Wang Chong was stunned. He had never imagined that Adia would invite him to dance. All was quiet as everyone stared at Wang Chong, awaiting his answer. Wang Chong instinctively wanted to refuse, but when he raised his head and was about to speak, he saw Adia's passionate gaze and the expectant gazes of the countless Khorasani, rebels, and even the Tang dynasty soldiers, and he couldn't help but hesitate. Haha, General Wang, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Dancing on the Fire God Festival is extremely common in our Khorasan. There's no need to be so reserved, Bahram said with a smile as he stepped forward and lightly nudged Wang Chong. Fine. Wang Chong's gaze swept over the Khorasani, rebels, and even the Tang dynasty soldiers. Seeing their expectant gazes, he finally relaxed and agreed. Bang! With Wang Chong's voice, the crowd exploded with thunderous cheers. Fireworks once more soared into the sky, and various Khorasani musical instruments once more began to play. Someone quickly stepped forward and placed 2 blazing metal ornaments on Wang Chong's shoulders. The dancing flames revolved around Wang Chong like stars. Princess, in truth, I don't know how to dance. Wang Chong awkwardly walked off the stage. It's fine. It's very simple. Adia sweetly smiled as she took Wang Chong's hand and dragged him to the center of the temple, where he began to dance beneath the blazing statue of the fire god. Adia's dance was graceful and noble, like that of a fire spirit, bold and unrestrained, and also imbued with the purity of a young girl. Bang! Inspired by Adia's dance, the crowd erupted in cheers. Even the flames in the room burned brightly. Wang Chong slowly followed Adia's dance. At the start, he was rather clumsy, but he was still a top-class martial artist. Gradually, Wang Chong grasped the rhythm and began to match Adia's dance. You're a very fast learner. Adia's eyes shone. Princess praises me too much. Wang Chong faintly smiled, maintaining a certain distance from Adia. The festive mood continued to soar. Boom! With the beating of a golden drum, the mood of the evening party reached its peak. In a flash, everyone began to enter the divine temple, dancing to the fervent music of the Fire God Festival. All the Khorassani, rebels and Tang dynasty soldiers, including Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, Cheng Qianli, and Shi Yuanqing, began to participate in this grand festival. Countless people cheered and danced, joy appearing on their faces. "My lord, may I dance with you?" As he was dancing in the center of the temple, Wang Chong suddenly heard an unfamiliar voice at his ear. Wang Chong turned his head and saw an unfamiliar Khorassani standing in front of him and extending an invitation. As it turned out, Adia was only the lead dancer. After the lead dancer was the second stage, in which everyone would participate in the evening party and switch partners. "Okay." Wang Chong faintly smiled and nodded. 1, 2, 3. The evening party entered its climax, with everyone immersed in the festivities and constantly switching partners. Wang Chong looked at the pure and kind faces around him, completely immersed in the festive mood. Everyone was simply enjoying the festivities and the joy of victory. Chapter 1235. From the Battle of Nanjiao to the Battle of Talas to the Battle of Khorasan, Wang Chong's mind had always been tense. But at this moment, as the music played, Wang Chong completely relaxed, immediately feeling an unprecedented sense of ease. Politics, military affairs, and logistics were thrown to the back of Wang Chong's mind. For the first time, Wang Chong was completely immersed in the grand festival, simply enjoying the joy of the festival. Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, and Cheng Qianli were all the same. After repeated victories, this was the reward that they all deserved. Time slowly passed, and after some time, a clear and melodious cry rang out, causing the surroundings to fall silent. Wang Chong opened his eyes, and everyone else stopped and looked in a certain direction. At the center of the crowd was Adia, dressed in a silver-white robe, standing like a fairy from a dream. Unbeknownst to her, a priest of the divine temple had handed her a long torch made of metal. This torch was more than 4 feet long, and its surface was engraved with countless complicated carvings. Most unique of all was the flame burning on it. It was not the usual scarlet flame, but a milky white color that Wang Chong had never seen before. This flame was extremely quiet, gentle, and exuded a holy and pure aura. "What is this?" Wang Chong glanced at the Khorassani next to him and asked. Wang Chong could be considered quite experienced, but this was the first time he had seen this milky white flame. All of this gave him a very novel feeling. "This is the sacred flame of our Sassanid dynasty. It has been passed down for more than 2,000 years, and each fire god festival ends with the lighting of the altar with the sacred flame. At this time, the princess can choose a guest that she deems most revered to light the sacred flame with her. This is also a form of etiquette of the highest order," the Khorassani said, an enthusiastic look on his face. "It's been a long time since such a festival has been held. I wonder who the princess will choose this time." Upon hearing this, Wang Chong's eyes flickered slightly. Soon, Wang Chong's gaze followed the crowd to Sassanid Princess Adia. The next moment there was a burst of cheers. Under everyone's gaze, Adia raised the milky white holy flame and walked toward Wang Chong. "General, you are the most honored guest of our Sassanid dynasty. Without you, our Sassanid dynasty would not have been able to escape the rule of the Arabs. Thus, at the final moment, allow me to invite you to light the sacred flame." Adia's beautiful eyes fell on Wang Chong, a sincere expression on her face. "Your Highness, many thanks for your invitation. This time, I accept your invitation, but not as an individual, but as a representative of the entire Tang dynasty." The victory over Arabia and the restoration of the Sassanid dynasty was not the work of a single person or faction, but the result of the combined efforts of the Tang dynasty, the Sassanids, and all the rebel armies. Thus, allow me and your Highness to represent the Tang dynasty and Khorasan in lighting the sacred flame. Wang Chong stared at Adia and sincerely said, "Good." Hearing this, the surrounding people couldn't help but cheer one after another. All the rebel leaders, including the Sassanids, were moved by Wang Chong's words. Even Sassanid Princess Adia couldn't help but look at him with admiration. As the crowd cheered, Wang Chong and Sassanid Princess Adia gripped the pure white sacred flame and walked toward the altar beneath the fire god statue. At this moment, everyone's eyes were brimming with passion and anticipation. Whoosh! There was a flash of light, and before everyone's eyes, the sacred flame ignited the altar. The milky white holy fire passed through the bottom of the sacrificial altar, and the tongue of fire followed a secret path, spreading all the way to the interior of the fire god statue. Wang! In the next instant, there was a flash of light, and the huge holy fire altar in the right hand of the fire god statue suddenly lit up, spewing out a milky white holy fire. The milky white sacred flame instantly transformed into a dazzling light that illuminated all of Khorasan. Bang! As this dazzling light lit up, all the people in Khorasan, including the people in the divine temple, let out a tsunami of cheers, and the festive mood in Khorasan reached its peak. The sacred flame was lit, signifying that the supreme god of fire and god of light, that the Sassanid dynasty worshipped, would protect the Sassanid empire for eternity. It also signified eternal peace and tranquility. As they gazed at the milky white sacred flame above their heads, all of them beamed with joy and smiles. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but narrow his eyes and smile. At this moment, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. All his efforts had been rewarded. The joyous crowd and the sacred flame above their heads were the best reward for him and all the soldiers of the Tang dynasty. Gallop! The east gradually brightened, and at this moment, the sound of hurried hooves came from the night, breaking the silence. Moreover, it sounded like the galloping of hooves was approaching the divine temple, and it sounded extremely urgent. Hearing the hurried galloping of the horses, the crowd quickly turned their heads to look. Reporting. Before the horseman had even gotten close, he immediately shouted, "The emissary of the imperial court has arrived. The envoy from the imperial court has arrived. Sirs, please go and welcome him." Ha ha ha, it's one of us. In the center of the divine temple, Feng Changqing suddenly laughed. This is truly joy on top of joy. Good things come in pairs. It must be the people the imperial court has bestowed upon Marquis. After waiting for so long, they've finally come. These words drew everyone's attention to Wang Chong. Wang Chong, congratulations. Gao Xianji turned his head and smiled at Wang Chong. The imperial court's reward had finally arrived, and Gao Xianji was sincerely happy for him. On the side, Bahram, Adia, and the other rebel leaders were also looking at Wang Chong with joy on their faces. Only Wang Chong remained indifferent. To Wang Chong, he didn't care whether he was bestowed a reward or not. "My lord, congratulations." "Congratulations, my lord." The surrounding people began to offer their congratulations. Although they didn't know the specifics, there was no doubt that the emperor of the Tang dynasty was bestowing upon this young commander, who excelled in both the pen and the sword. All of them were sincerely happy. "Let's go and welcome him." Outside the lord of Khorasan's estate, Wang Chong's group met with the emissaries sent by the imperial court. This group of 20 to 30 people had solemn and respectful expressions, but they did not enter the estate. Many of them were even seated on horseback, standing motionless. Around them were Wang Chong's father Wang Yan, his big brother Wang Fu, his master the evil emperor, and the chief of Wuxiang. The one who has come is the young Marquis Wang Chong. Before Wang Chong's group could arrive, an official on horseback with an old-fashioned expression spoke. Everyone couldn't help but frown at this voice. This was completely different from the celebratory mood they had anticipated. But no one had time to think too deeply about this matter. "I am." Wang Chong dismounted from his horse and replied, "Mm." The official firmly nodded, and then he exchanged glances with the lavishly dressed officials at his side, apparently confirming Wang Chong's identity. Wang Chong glanced at this person and saw that he was around 30 to 40 years old and dressed in the robes of a civil official. But in all his time in the capital, Wang Chong had never seen this person, nor had he heard his big uncle mention him. As for the officials at his side, they were dressed in red robes, clearly officials from the Bureau of Rights. The sight of these officials from the Bureau of Rights made Wang Chong's heart thump. But at this moment, Wang Chong heard the inflexible and unperturbed voice of that civil official. "Eunuch, it's enough. Read the imperial decree." "Yes, Lord One." The shrill voice of a drake rang out in everyone's ears. Lord One caused the hearts of Gao Xianji and Feng Changqing to thump. The eunuchs of the imperial court had a special status, especially when reading imperial decrees. They represented the Holy Emperor in the imperial court. The two of them had guarded the border for so long that they had seen many things, but they had never seen a eunuch so respectful to a civil official. At this moment, the two of them glanced at each other and frowned. But before they could speak, an embroidered eunuch of some status rode out of the ranks, a horsetail whisk in one hand, and an imperial decree in the other. Wang Chong, Wang Yan, and Wang Fu stepped forward to hear the decree. Under everyone's gazes, the embroidered-robed eunuch suddenly spoke with a solemn expression and bright eyes. This lowly subject hears the decree. Wang Chong, Wang Yan, and Wang Fu immediately stepped forward to hear the decree. Li Sai Kong Xian, Su Hanshan hears the decree. This lowly subject hears the decree. Li Sai Kong Xian and Su Hanshan also stepped forward. Su Ke, Chun Bin, Shueqianjun, Su Shixian stepped forward to hear the decree. Su Ke, Chun Bin, Shueqianjun, and Su Shixian all stepped forward. Banahan, King Gonka, stepped forward to hear the decree. Banahan and the King Gonka also stepped forward, their heads deeply bowed, their eyes shining with deep reverence. Even to these tribal leaders of the western regions, the holy emperor of the Tang dynasty, he was in existence as high as the sun and moon. No one dared to have the slightest blasphemy towards this supreme ruler of the Central Plains, who had conquered countless surrounding empires, who had single-handedly created the most prosperous era in the Central Plains, and who was also the strongest martial artist. They only felt respect and reverence from the depths of their hearts. In a flash, all the surrounding people knelt. Whoosh! In the next moment, under everyone's gaze, the embroidered eunuch, who seemed to have quite a high status, shook the imperial edict in his hands, spread his hands, raised it high, and began to read it. By the will of the heavens, the emperor decrees. The young Marquis Wang Chong drove away the Uzan and the Western Turks, stabilized Qixi, and protected the country. In addition, in the Battle of Talas, the young Marquis galloped over a great distance to reinforce the Tang Empire. Brave and astute, loyal and righteous, he led the soldiers of my Tang dynasty in defeating the invading Abu Muslim and Arab armies, killing more than 400,000 enemy soldiers, protecting the country, and raising the prestige of the country. In the Battle of Khorasan, the young Marquis used the blizzard to kill more than 500,000 Arab soldiers. In these two major battles, he killed more than 1 million enemy soldiers, setting an unprecedented record. The imperial court must reward those who have made contributions and punish those who have made mistakes. The young Marquis, a 17-year-old youth, has established an unrivaled record on the battlefield. It is appropriate to greatly reward him and proclaim him to the world as a role model. The world must know that loyalty and righteousness are righteous, and that rewards and punishments are fair. Thus, our Central Plains will be filled with an endless stream of talented individuals. Thus, at the behest of the Holy Emperor, the 6 ministries have conferred upon the young Marquis, Wang Chong, the King of Foreign Lands, a noble title, and 20,000 dawn of food, 30,000 bushels of pearls, countless corals and agates, and a royal residence in the capital, and proclaim it to the world. Bang! The words of the imperial court's reward for Wang Chong instantly caused the crowd to seethe with excitement. Gao Xinji and Feng Chongqing were already mentally prepared. However, when they heard this, they couldn't help but be moved. Chapter 1236. The King of Foreign Lands. No one had expected the Holy Emperor to favor Wang Chong so much. He was not made a duke or a noble, but King of Foreign Lands. Such a reward had never been bestowed before, even surpassing everyone's expectations. The King of Foreign Lands. It's actually the King of Foreign Lands. The imperial court has actually made Marquis a king. Ha ha ha, wonderful. In the future, our lord will be a true king. The subordinates at Wang Chong's side raised their heads, their eyes bright, and their expressions excited. Made a king. Made a king. Even higher than a duke. No one had even dared to imagine such a thing. From now on, Wang Chong was a true member of the imperial family, an existence on equal footing with the King of Song and King Qi. In the 200-some years since the establishment of the Tang dynasty, there had never been a precedent of making a king of a different surname. Wang Chong's peerless achievements had finally broken this rule and allowed him to become the first king of the Tang dynasty. At this moment, even Bahram, the Sassanid princess, the rebel leaders, Banahan, the king Gonka, and even the surrounding Anchi Protectorate army soldiers blushed in joy for Wang Chong. Effort would eventually be rewarded. Wang Chong was a friend of the Sassanid dynasty and the leader of the coalition army. For him to be valued by the Tang dynasty, all of them were sincerely happy for him. But at this moment, the only person who remained calm was Wang Chong. His gaze swept past the eunuch in embroidered robes, who seemed to have quite a high status, the civil officials who were waiting with their eyes closed, and the envoys of the imperial court with stiff and solemn expressions behind him. His brows furrowed imperceptibly. To be rewarded by the imperial court's king of foreign lands truly was something to be happy about. But from the looks of it, these people did not seem to be celebrating. Moreover, the imperial decree in the silver-robed eunuch's hand was clearly not finished. As expected, the eunuch's shrill voice came from beside his ear. In addition, after the discussion of the 6 ministries, the young marquis has been conferred the title of advisor-in-waiting, allowing him to participate in the politics of the court and immediately return to the capital to report. As for his military authority in all affairs in Khorasan, he handed them over to Wen Chongqing, Tang Qingyu, and Li Fanming. In addition, Wang Yan will be conferred the title of General Pacifying Barbarians, and Wang Fu will be conferred the title of General Tiger Roar, and will be transferred to the northeast. Boom! Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Gao Xinji, Feng Chongqing, Shi Yuanqing, the kneeling Banahan, the king Gonka, Bahram, and the rebel leader all revealed expressions of extreme shock. What's going on? Is your majesty planning to transfer the young marquis away? Transfer military power. Why did he want to transfer the military power? All of us trust the young marquis, and it is only with him that we can resist the Arabs. If the young marquis is transferred away, who will deal with the Arabs? No. Why was he only an advisor-in-waiting? Wasn't he supposed to be the king of foreign lands? Why is it such a low rank? The crowd was in an uproar. If they hadn't heard it with their own ears, they would have believed that there was something wrong with their ears. Nearby, Feng Chongqing stared at Wang Chong's back, his mind in turmoil. Wang Chong's title of king of foreign lands placed him far above all the dukes and prefectural dukes. He was truly an exalted noble, but no matter how high a king was, if he had no real authority, it was just an empty title. The Tang dynasty had many kings, but only the king of Song and king of Qi had any real authority. The imperial court had taken away Wang Chong's military authority and stripped him of his position as Qixi Protector General, leaving him with only the title of advisor-in-waiting and the right to participate in court affairs. This was a classic case of an apparent promotion, but an actual demotion. How could this be? Just what happened? Feng Chongqing's eyes were wide open, his lips trembling, his mind in chaos. After handling so many matters, Feng Chongqing believed that he was very familiar with the changes and decisions of the imperial court. But Feng Chongqing had never imagined that he would encounter something like this in his life. Extreme nobility and extreme humility were actually gathered on the same person. On the side, Gao Xinji's face was also covered in shock, his gaze slowly shifting from the silver-robed eunuch to Wang Chong at his side. After so many major victories, this was not the scene that everyone had been hoping for, one that would be rewarded handsomely. Almost instinctively, Gao Xinji sensed that something had gone wrong in the imperial court. That shrill voice was still ringing in everyone's ears. Once Su Han's Han, Banahan, and the king of Gonka had been rewarded, Wang Chong finally raised his head and stepped forward to receive the decree. This subject receives the decree. Silence. The lord of Khorasani residence was deathly still, without any hint of joy. Even those ordinary Khorasani soldiers, who knew nothing about the politics of the Tang dynasty, felt that something was strange. Gonggong, forgive Gao Xinji for speaking out of turn, but just what has happened? Since His Divine Majesty has already made Wang Chong king of foreign lands and transferred him to the capital, Why has he only been given the title of advisor-in-waiting? And why has Wang Chong been stripped of his post as Qixi Protector General and handed over his military authority? When the announcement of the imperial edict ended, Gao Xinji strode forward and asked. Of everyone present, Gao Xinji had the highest seniority, and as one of the empire's supreme great generals, Gao Xinji had the right to ask questions. The Anqi Protectorate army was indebted to Wang Chong, whether as an ally, a friend, a guide, or a senior. Gao Xinji hoped that Wang Chong would be truly valued by the imperial court and not be casually demoted and stripped of his military authority. Lord Gao, this is the decision of His Divine Majesty and the 6 bureaus. Is my lord's concern whether to reward him or not? The eunuch in embroidered robes, whose face was pale, glanced at Gao Xinji indifferently. In an instant Gao Xinji frowned. In the surroundings, everyone's expressions turned ugly. As an important minister of the empire and the Anqi war god, other than Bian Lingcheng, no eunuch had ever dared to speak to Gao Xinji in such a tone. Lord Gao, there is no need to ask any more questions. The imperial court will naturally let my lord know what you should know. As for what you shouldn't know, even if you ask us, we will know nothing. On the side, Lord Wan, who had not spoken much during the reading of the imperial edict, suddenly spoke. His expression was rigid, and when he spoke, his entire body did not move except for his lips. But this statement alone caused Gao Xinji, Feng Chongqing, Wang Yan, and Qing Qianli to widen their eyes. To be able to interrupt this embroidered-clothed eunuch, it could be seen that this official surnamed Wen's status was even higher than everyone had imagined. I only want to ask one question. At this moment, a young voice rang out in everyone's ears. Wang Chong, who had been standing in front of the emissaries this entire time, suddenly spoke. May I ask which of you are Lord Wan, Lord Tang, and Lord Li? Wang Chong's words were flat and unperturbed, but in an instant, the surroundings fell silent. All eyes, including the covetous gaze of the leading official surnamed Wan, fell silent and turned to Wang Chong. These are them. Finally, the official surnamed Wan turned his head and pointed at several figures behind him. Wang Chong followed the man's finger and immediately saw 3 figures exuding powerful auras. These people were riding war horses and dressed in Confucian attire. Their expressions were solemn, and their essence energy was restrained. However, the power contained in their bodies was actually stronger than Qing Qianli's supreme desolation Empyrean god state. Wang Chong was also an important official of the military, and his reputation was so illustrious that there was practically no one in the world who did not know of him. These 3 were so powerful that someone of Wang Chong's status should have known them, but Wang Chong had no impression of them at all. In the entire military, Wang Chong had never seen any information about them. If not for the imperial decree mentioning them, Wang Chong would not even know their names. With Wang Chong's status, this was simply inconceivable. These people seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. But a moment later, Wang Chong's eyes inadvertently flitted over the wrist of one of these people. Wang Chong's eyes widened. Wang Chong could clearly see a black mark on this person's wrist. At almost the same time, that person seemed to sense Wang Chong's gaze. With a shake of his wrist, the sleeve of his robe slid down, concealing the black mark on his wrist. Lord Wang, the imperial court has decreed that upon receiving the imperial decree, you must immediately hand over your military authority and return to the capital. This is the rule of the imperial court when conferring titles, as well as His Majesty's decree. Lord Wang, please cooperate. At this moment, the official surnamed Wan spurred his horse forward and spoke to Wang Chong. His expression was inflexible, and his words were devoid of emotion. He seemed to be doing everything by the book. Wait a moment. You're being unreasonable. My lord has only just received the imperial decree, so why are you telling him to leave now? Just who are you people? I don't think that you've come to announce an imperial decree. You've come to seize military authority. All of Wang Chong's subordinates were agitated, and even the Khorassani soldiers sensed that something was wrong. They began to feel agitated on behalf of Wang Chong. Lord Wang, don't leave. Khorasan needs you. The surrounding generals of the Revolutionary Army also panicked. Although these battles appeared to be the result of the combined efforts of the Khorasani, the rebel armies, and the Tang dynasty, everyone knew that the reason they had the confidence to resist all of Arabia was because of the young Marquis of the Tang dynasty. Although he was only 17, he was the true pillar of the Khorasan people. Chapter 1237. This emissary, could you request His Majesty the Emperor of the Tang dynasty to slightly alter the order and allow the young Marquis to remain in Khorasan? Bahram also took a few steps forward and used a few words that he had just learned, mixed with the Khorasani language, to plead with the official surnamed one on his horse. Bahram was not the sort to lose his composure, but everything had happened too suddenly. Wang Chong's appointment and transfer had thrown even an old official like Bahram into a panic, so much so that he had come up with the idea of negotiating with the celestial ambassador. The official surnamed one looked down from his high vantage point, and upon hearing Bahram's words, he slightly creased his brow. Although I don't know what you're saying, the decree of the imperial court cannot be changed. The words of the sovereign cannot be taken lightly. Lord Wang, you should understand this principle. The first part of his words was directed at Bahram, but the second part was directed at Wang Chong, his expression harsh and harsh. It was clear that he was placing all the blame on Wang Chong. Enough, Wang Chong suddenly said. This is the decree of the imperial court, the order of the Holy Emperor. A military decree is like a mountain and cannot be changed. Great General, I know that you have good intentions, but the words of the sovereign cannot be taken lightly. The Tang dynasty is different from the Sassanid dynasty. Once a decree is made, it must be followed. As for Khorasan, we have already made ample preparations. With the coalition army and Lord Gao and Lord Feng presiding over the situation, even without me, it is still impregnable. Even if the Arabs attack again, there is nothing to worry about. Moreover, with 50,000 Tang dynasty ballistae, even if the Arabs wanted to, they wouldn't be able to break through. From the first day they broke through Khorasan, Wang Chong, Gao Xianji, and Feng Chongqing had been thinking about how to establish a firm foothold in Khorasan, so that even if they were not present, Khorasan would still be able to steadily develop and prevent it from falling into the hands of the Arabs. It would become the strongest fortress of the Tang dynasty against the Arabian Empire. After saying these words, Wang Chong turned around, parted the crowd, and headed toward the 3 Confucian ministers, who had been appointed by the imperial edict to take over his military authority. My lords, Khorasan is the bridgehead of the Tang dynasty. As long as we properly utilize the strength of the coalition army and work together with the Sassanid rebel army, the Arabs are nothing to worry about. After I leave, I hope that the few of you will manage well. Do not let the merits that all the soldiers have exchanged their lives for go to waste. Wang Chong said in a deep voice. My lord. Behind him, Xue Qianjun looked at Wang Chong's back, his heart trembling. Wang Chong had maintained an extremely calm demeanor since the announcement of the imperial edict. All of his actions and words were in accordance with the rules and were extremely appropriate. However, Xue Qianjun, who had followed Wang Chong for so long, clearly noticed that Wang Chong's hands, hidden in his sleeves, were trembling ever so slightly. Xue Qianjun was well aware that Wang Chong was feeling far more complicated than anyone else at this moment. Lord Wang, there's no need for you to worry about these things. We know what to do. The 3 of them looked down from their horses, their expressions devoid of emotion. Bastard! The surrounding officers clenched their fists, their minds seething with hatred. Wang Chong was the young marquis that the Holy Emperor had personally conferred upon him. Qixi Protector General. Even though he had been removed, he was still the new king of foreign lands, a true king of the Tang dynasty with a different surname. His status was above all the other nobles. But these 3 people, including the official surnamed one, spoke to Wang Chong without the slightest respect, infuriating all the officers present. Lord Wang, please. The decree of the imperial court cannot be defied. Lord Wang, please hand over the jade seal as soon as possible and come with us. At this moment, several horsemen emerged from the crowd and galloped toward Wang Chong. The officials from the Bureau of Rights looked at Wang Chong and gestured for him to follow. Impudent! Do you think that Marquis is a criminal? You dare to treat Marquis like this? With a harsh shout and the clanging of sabers, Li Sai and the others behind Wang Chong angrily glared at the officials from the Bureau of Rights. Everyone in the capital of the Tang dynasty knew that the officials from the Bureau of Rights were King Qi's men. The fact that the officials from the Bureau of Rights had accompanied Wang Chong to reward him clearly showed that they had ill intentions. The red-robed officials from the Bureau of Rights paled at the sight of Li Sai and the others drawing their sabers. Marquis, we are only following orders. We hope that Marquis can understand our difficulties and not make things difficult for us. Wang Chong said nothing, only coldly glared at the trio. Wang Chong had no idea what the King of Song had said to these officials from the Bureau of Rights, nor did he know why they were in such a rush to have him leave, but there was no doubt that they had ill intentions. Whether or not to leave and when to leave, I have my own plans. Wang Chong stared at the officials from the Bureau of Rights and suddenly said, But Marquis. The officials from the Bureau of Rights tried to argue. Let me ask you, did the imperial decree say that I should leave right now? Or is this a decree from His Divine Majesty? Wang Chong stared at them, his eyes intimidating. The officials from the Bureau of Rights instantly grimaced at Wang Chong's words. The imperial decree had naturally not specified a time to leave, and the Holy Emperor would never issue a decree for such a minor matter. Falsifying an imperial decree was no trifling matter. Not even someone as bold as the heavens would dare to do such a thing. Wang Chong ignored them, turning around and walking toward Gao Xianji and Baram. Lord Gao, it seems like I must leave. I can only leave the matter of Khorasan to you. Understood. Be at ease. I will do my best to protect this place, Gao Xianji gloomily said to Wang Chong. But while no one was paying attention, a tiny voice rang out in Wang Chong's ear. Wang Chong, something that we don't know about must have happened in the imperial court, or else it would have never been like this. You will have to investigate this matter on your own. In addition, if something happens and you need my help, please inform me. Wang Chong froze, a hint of shock in his eyes, and then he nodded. Many thanks, my lord. Gao Xinji gazed at Wang Chong's determined and calm face and inwardly sighed. A trifling advisor-in-waiting was of little importance in the imperial court, and there was no precedent for this title of King of Foreign Lands. This was clearly an empty title. He truly had no idea what sort of major change had happened in the imperial court for Wang Chong to be given this sort of apparent promotion, while secretly dismantling his military authority. If it was any other person, they would have long lost their composure out of anger. But Wang Chong had managed to restrain himself, maintaining his composure. This was not something a normal person could do. Wang Chong had no idea what Gao Xinji was thinking, and he turned to Baram. This mobilization had been far too sudden. Not only him, but even his father and big brother's soldiers had been mobilized. The ones who needed to be appeased the most were Baram and the other rebel soldiers. Great General, this is an order from the Holy Emperor, and I cannot defy it. But please believe me, since the Empire has garrisoned troops here, it will definitely defend this place to the death. Also, I'm only leaving temporarily. It's not like I'm never coming back. Once I'm done with the matters at hand, I will naturally return to Khorasan. Wang Chong sincerely said. My lord, there's no need to explain. Baram gave a long sigh. I can completely understand, and this is not something my lord can resolve. I only wish to make one point clear. No matter the time or situation, my lord will always be a friend and ally of our Sassanid Empire. Although my lord is not present, as long as my lord's successor remains loyal to the alliance with our Sassanid dynasty, the Sassanid dynasty will remain loyal to the Tang dynasty. We will become the staunchest ally of the Tang dynasty in the West. Thank you. Wang Chong nodded. He had been waiting for these words. With these words, it didn't matter if he remained in Khorasan or not. Lord Wang, is this enough? The leading official surnamed when held the reins of his horse with both hands. He had been staring at Wang Chong this entire time, watching as he exchanged orders with Gao Xianji and Baram. Only when it was about time did he finally speak. Chong'er, the decree of the sovereign cannot be defied. After all, this is an order from the imperial court. A mellow voice came from behind him. Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, walked over and lightly patted Wang Chong's back in consolation. We've already won the war. That's the most important thing. Wang Chong's big brother, Wang Fu, also walked over. Wang Yan and Wang Fu both felt extremely gratified as they gazed at Wang Chong's youthful figure. The Wang clan was a clan of ministers and generals, and for generations it had been their duty to serve the country with absolute loyalty. As a scion of the Wang clan, Wang Chong had perfectly fulfilled this duty. As for the rest, it was no longer important. Father, your child understands. Wang Chong nodded. He took out the seal representing the authority of the Qixi Protector General and handed it to the three middle-aged Confucian experts. This small jade seal attracted the attention of countless people. All of them knew that this seal not only represented the authority of the Qixi Protector General, but also the position of the leader of the coalition army. The seal in Wang Chong's hand possessed supreme authority and status. Lord Wang, there is no need to worry. We will properly manage it. The leading Confucian expert extended a hand and took the jade seal from Wang Chong's hand. Lord Wang, it's already daybreak. It's about time to move out. Please come with us. An official from the Bureau of Rights stepped forward and spoke. As they spoke, they gestured to the back. Clop, 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 clop. A cloud of dust rose, and before everyone's eyes, a group of 20 chamberlains of insignia dressed in golden armor surrounded Wang Chong and the officials from the Bureau of Rights. The Golden Guards. These were the most revered guards of the imperial palace. As the protectors of the Son of Heaven, they represented the Son of Heaven of the Tang dynasty. These officials from the Bureau of Rights had brought the Golden Guards with them to Khorasan, clearly indicating that they had made ample preparations. Clang-clang. Chapter 1238. Anyone who dares to move against Marquis will first have to step over my corpse. They didn't care about any emissary of the court. Wang Chong was a meritorious minister of the Tang dynasty. Anyone who dared to use the method of escorting prisoners against Wang Chong, would be their enemy. Upon seeing this sight, the faces of the chamberlains of imperial insignia warped. Their eyes were bloodshot, and it was clear that they were willing to risk their lives for Wang Chong. Even though they knew that attacking the Golden Guards was tantamount to rebellion and only death, this was the first time the Golden Guards had ever dared to do such a thing. What are you doing? Put away your sabers. Wang Chong waved his hand, and though the soldiers were unwilling, they still put away their weapons. I've already given you the jade seal. With this jade seal, you can mobilize all the soldiers of Qixi. I hope that you will treat it well. Let's go. Wang Chong pulled over a warhorse and mounted it. He did not delay any longer. Khorasan was the westernmost barrier of the Tang dynasty, and as everyone watched, Wang Chong led his army away. He had left almost all his soldiers in Khorasan, even Li Sai, the King Gongka and Su Hanshan. Wang Chong had only brought Xue Qianjun, Su Kui, Cheng Sanyuan, Zhang Ke, and Tinsum Wushang cavalry with him as he left Khorasan. Flap flap. The moment Wang Chong left Khorasan, countless messenger pigeons began to fly out from Khorasan. Wang Chong had been made king of foreign lands, but he had also been stripped of his military authority and summoned back to the capital. He had been made an advisor-in-waiting, an apparent promotion but an actual demotion. This news seemed to grow wings, rapidly spreading to the entire Tang dynasty and the surrounding kingdoms. What? How could such a thing happen? Upon receiving this news, the distant biting Protector General in Sishun stood up from his throne, a look of extreme shock in his eyes. Although he and Wang Chong had clashed before, he would definitely be happy to see Wang Chong suffer. However, this matter was completely different. He had made such a great contribution, but he had been demoted. This kind of thing could happen to Wang Chong, and it could also happen to anyone else in the military. Impossible. I want you to check again. I want to make sure that this information is accurate. At the same time, The land of Longxi trembled as if there was an earthquake. Wang Chong had killed more than 1 million Arab cavalry in a series of major battles, pushing this powerful kingdom to the west of the Tsong Mountains, all the way to the east. There had never been such an achievement since ancient times. But in the end, he was stripped of his military authority. This left Big Dipper Great General Geshu Han in great shock. At the same time, in the northeast and southwest of the Tang dynasty, all the generals and commanders were stunned by this unexpected news. All of the Great Tang seemed to be shaking like a tsunami. The countries bordering the Tang dynasty were also stunned by this news. But unlike the Tang dynasty military, when Wang Chong was summoned back to the capital, the Western Turks, Uzun, Goguryeo, Nanzhao, and all the factions that had once clashed with Wang Chong breathed a long sigh of relief. Ha ha ha, High Priest, you truly have a divine foresight. There's no need for us to do anything. The Tang dynasty will have its own internal strife. Given enough time, we will rise again and break Khorasan. In the distant Baghdad, Arab Emperor Mu'tasim III spread open his arms and heartily laughed as music began to resound. This was the best news he had heard in a long time. Upon receiving the news that Wang Chong had left Khorasan, Mu'tasim III almost immediately summoned all the musicians of the court and all the civil and military officials to a grand celebration. Although only Wang Chong had left, Khorasan still stood tall. The Sassanid dynasty and its hundreds of thousands of soldiers still standing in a distant standoff with the Arabs. But to Mu'tasim III, although Khorasan was still powerful without that youth, it no longer had the capital to contend against the Arabian Empire. It wouldn't be long before he could lead his army east and once more destroy the Sassanid dynasty, recapture Khorasan, and restore its former glory. He could even gather more soldiers from Khorasan and launch a campaign against the Tang dynasty in the distant east. High Priest, we will immediately gather soldiers. In less than 3 months, we will definitely flatten Khorasan. Mu'tasim III heartily laughed. No, now is not the time. An elderly voice came from behind Mu'tasim III. The high priest, dressed in a black robe and wielding his scepter, stood behind Mu'tasim III. These simple words were spoken neither too loudly nor too softly, but they instantly caused the entire hall to fall silent, and even the music to dim. Countless pairs of eyes looked at the high priestess. No one understood what the high priestess meant. High priest, that brat has already left. Do you mean that I should still wait? Mu'tasim III put down his wine cup and stood up from his throne, confusion on his face. The time had come, and he truly did not understand why the high priest wanted him to wait. There is no need for your majesty to worry. Your majesty will naturally understand in a little while. The high priest indifferently said, his voice heavy with mystery. Mu'tasim III furrowed his brows and was puzzled. However, it was also at this time that a series of hurried footsteps came from outside the hall. Reporting, an Arab imperial palace guard gripped his saber and swiftly strode in with his head lowered. Your Majesty, an envoy of the Tang dynasty requests an audience. What? Upon hearing this, Mu'tasim III was dumbfounded. Arabia and the Tang dynasty were at war. At this moment, nothing could surprise him more than this news. The officials in the hall glanced at each other in dismay. No one knew why the Tang dynasty had sent an envoy at a time like this. Only the high priest standing behind Mu'tasim III had a faint smile on his face, as if he had already expected this scene. Time slowly passed as Wang Chong, Sukui, and the others set out on a light carriage, traveling with the officials from the Bureau of Rights and the Tinsum Golden Guards toward the capital. For several days, no one spoke, all of them silent. The only sounds were the galloping of horses and the bleak wind. The officials from the Bureau of Rights and the Tinsum Golden Guards tactfully put some distance between themselves and Wang Chong's group, the two sides even feeling a little awkward when they exchanged glances. After passing through Samarkand, Talas, the Tsong Mountains, and the western region Suaya, they quickly entered the territory of the Tang dynasty. Before they knew it, another 5 or 6 days had passed. During this period of time, every day was extremely long for everyone, and from the moment they left Khorasan, Wang Chong had remained silent. No one knew what Wang Chong was thinking, but when they saw Wang Chong's appearance, they all felt their hearts ache. Marquis, everything will be fine. The imperial court must have made a mistake. Once we return to the capital and investigate everything, the imperial court will naturally give the jade seal to Marquis. Xue Qianjun finally couldn't help but step forward and softly comfort Wang Chong. That's right, Marquis. Perhaps the situation isn't as bad as we think. Once Marquis meets His Majesty, everything will vanish like the clouds and rain. Su Kui and the others also stepped forward. It had been several days since Wang Chong had spoken, and everyone could sense that Marquis was in a terrible mood. Haha, do you think that I'm worried about military authority? To everyone's surprise, Wang Chong smiled and shook his head. Is that not the case? They glanced at each other, but none of them said the final words. Wang Chong shook his head. It was probably not just Xue Qianjun and Su Qi who were thinking about military authority. Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing were probably thinking about it as well. But no one knew that this was not what Wang Chong was worried about. Truly, the imperial court's mobilization had thrown his plans into disarray, catching Wang Chong by surprise. But to Wang Chong, even if he had to hand over military authority, he had already taken care of everything. Karasan had more than 10,000 Tang dynasty ballistae under Su Hanshan's command, the high and thick walls, and the hundreds of thousands of soldiers garrisoned in the city. Moreover, Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing, the twin walls of the empire, were there to assist him. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Moreover, Bahram had promised that as long as the Tang dynasty did not change its agreement with the Tang dynasty, the Sassanid dynasty and the rest of the army would forever be firm allies of the Tang dynasty. With these things, whether or not Wang Chong was present, Karasan was basically safe. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Wang Chong was truly pondering the matter behind the imperial decree. This matter was far too unusual, and Wang Chong needed to understand what was going on. Has there been any news from the King of Song? As these thoughts flew through his mind, Wang Chong quickly turned to Zhang Quebec. No, we still haven't received a letter from them. Zhang Ke gloomily said. Wang Chong froze, his brow creased in a gloomy frown. If there was one person who understood the cause and effect of this apparent promotion, and could tell him in detail, it was undoubtedly the King of Song. But Wang Chong had no idea what had happened in the capital while he was managing Karasan. Then what about my big uncle? Wang Chong continued. This time, he had sent a total of 2 letters to the capital. One was to the King of Song, and the other was to his big uncle. Lord Wang said that he was also investigating this matter. When the incident occurred, he just happened to have been transferred elsewhere. So not even he knows what happened that day. Zhang Ke sternly said, his head drooping even lower. The journey from the western regions to the capital was very long, and would take a very long time. But this was no trivial matter. Thus, Zhang Ke had chosen a smaller but faster hunting falcon from the Sassanid dynasty. But in the end, he had still not obtained the information he wanted. I understand. Chapter 1239. My lord, Qixi is only several hundred li away. At this moment, a familiar voice rang out in his ear. A Wuxian cavalry soldier had suddenly turned his head and called out. What are you waiting for? After leaving Sueya, the group rode for another 2 or 3 days, and they were finally about to reach Qixi. All sorts of emotions welled up in their hearts. They had set out from Qixi, and in the end, they had returned to this place. Whoosh! Right at this moment, the sound of flapping wings suddenly rang out. Moreover, it was flying rapidly towards them. In an instant everyone's hearts froze. Turning their heads, they saw an Arabian hunting falcon descending from the sky. When it was still several dozen feet from the ground, it suddenly made a sharp turn and landed on Zhang Ke's shoulder. It wasn't just Xue Qianjun, Su Kui, and even Zhang Ke who saw this hunting falcon was dumbfounded. Contrary to what they had imagined, this hunting falcon had not come from the capital, but from behind them. The only place that could send them a message at a time like this was the distant Karasan. Everyone's eyes began to twitch. Swish! As everyone watched, Zhang Ke tore open the letter. With a single glance, Zhang Ke's entire body trembled, as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. His face instantly turned ghastly pale. My lord, it's bad. Something's happened to Karasin. Zhang Ke raised his head and looked at Wang Chong said. His eyes were wide open and filled with panic. Despite having known Zhang Ke for so long, they had never seen him like this. Without another word, Wang Chong took the letter from Zhang Quebec. With just a glance, Wang Chong instantly turned ghastly pale. The letter had been sent from Karasin by Su Han's Han, and it only mentioned a few matters. Not long after Wang Chong left Karasin, those middle-aged Confucian experts swiftly took over the military authority of Karasin, and in a short period of time, they worked with the official surnamed one to carry out several tasks. The first order of business was to bypass Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing and reach an agreement with the Arab Caliph Mu'tasim III. The two sides agreed that the Tang dynasty and Arabia would never go to war. The second matter was that the Tang dynasty had promised to return 700 million taels of gold to Arabia to show its sincerity. At the same time, Arabia promised to accept the Confucians, allowing them to establish Confucian schools in all the regions of the Arabian Empire and spread Confucian teachings without any restrictions. The third matter was that the Tang dynasty had promised to withdraw its army from Karasin, withdraw all the ballisti and soldiers of the Tang dynasty, and never again participate in the conflict between the Arabian Empire and the Sassanid dynasty. The first condition had already caused Wang Chong to grimace. The second condition had caused Wang Chong's breathing to become ragged, and the third condition had caused Wang Chong's face to turn as white as a sheet of paper. He had never imagined that so many things would have happened in such a short time. Arabia was a country of war, a country of tigers and wolves. Peaceful coexistence with Arabia was nothing more than a fool's dream, a fish from a tree. The first condition was that the Tang dynasty had given up on an excellent opportunity by negotiating peace with Arabia. But even so, Wang Chong still had ways to make up for it. The second condition was to return 700 million taels of gold to Arabia. Although it would be a severe economic loss, and Wang Chong would have to surrender the situation that he had worked so hard to win, no matter how much money was returned, it could still be calculated. In the future it could be taken back. But the third condition was that the Tang dynasty withdraw its army from Karasin, withdraw all the ballisti and soldiers of the Tang dynasty, and never again participate in the conflict between the Arabian Empire and the Sassanid dynasty. This was to uproot and utterly destroy all the achievements that Wang Chong and the countless soldiers of the Tang dynasty had worked so hard to build. Wang Chong had spent a great deal of effort in order to establish a firm foothold in Karasin and forever suppress the threat of the Central Plains that was Arabia. This was the same as removing the firewood from the bottom of the cauldron. All of Wang Chong's efforts had been for naught. It had been meaningless. 30 achievements to dust and earth, 8,000 li to the clouds and moon. At this moment, Wang Chong felt like his entire body was trembling and the world was spinning. Warning! Special event. User's mission The Empire's Choice has encountered a major change. The mission has not yet been completed, and the conflict between the Tang dynasty and Arabia has not yet concluded. User will be deducted 5,000 points of destiny energy. At almost the same time, the voice of the Stone of Destiny resounded in his mind. Rumble! Wang Chong's entire body trembled, as if he had been struck by a lightning bolt. Whoosh! Wang Chong's vision went dark, and he couldn't help but vomit blood. My lord! Rumble! Shui Qianjun, Su Ke, Cheng Sanyuan, Zhang Ke, and all the Wuxian cavalry paled in fright and madly charged at Wang Chong. In a flash, all of them were panicking. How could this be? How could this be? Is everything going to be for naught? At this moment Wang Chong howled, his vision going black, and he knew nothing else. Darkness, endless darkness. Wang Chong felt like his soul was drifting through endless cold and darkness, with no place to rely on. Countless thoughts flooded his mind. Ah, give me back my child. Wang Chong saw endless flames, and within the flames was a woman holding the corpse of a child, wailing mournfully. Around her were countless collapsed buildings and corpses lying in pools of blood. "My lord, we've lost. The divine continent has been destroyed. We can never go back." In a flash, Wang Chong saw the half-collapsed mountaintop. Countless subordinates sat around him, blood dripping from their foreheads, eyes, ears, and nostrils. Beneath their armor, blood had already gathered into rivers. The despair in their eyes caused Wang Chong's heart to ache. Rivers shattered, the earth turned to ash. One scene after another, filled with fire and blood, surged through his mind. Wave after wave of pain washed over Wang Chong's soul. In the end, when the world was falling apart and collapsing, Wang Chong finally couldn't help but scream, and suddenly woke up. The surroundings were quiet. It seemed like only a moment, but it also seemed like countless centuries. Finally, Wang Chong heard a faint sound, accompanied by the sound of splashing water. Wang Chong soon felt his forehead was wet, as if someone was holding a wet towel and slowly wiping his forehead, cheeks, and neck. The movement of that arm was very delicate and gentle. "Who is it?" In the darkness, there seemed to be a ripple spreading out. For some reason, Wang Chong felt that the owner of that hand had a very familiar feeling. Wang Chong tried to open his eyes, wanting to see the owner of that hand clearly. However, in the next moment, an endless wave of soreness surged like a surging tide, and Wang Chong instantly regained his senses. "You're awake." A gentle voice, tinged with a slight tremble, came from next to his ear. Wang Chong opened his eyes, and a somewhat dazzling light entered his vision. Wang Chong slightly closed his eyes, and when the light softened, Wang Chong could clearly see a familiar figure. "Qichin." Su Yiqin gave a slight nod, a faint smile on her face. Her face was pale, her eyes red, and her entire body seemed to have become much thinner. As she gazed at Wang Chong, Su Yiqin's eyes flashed with a deep sense of pity and heartache. "Qichin, where is this?" Wang Chong placed his hands on his back and tried to get up. His voice was hoarse and extremely weak. "Qishi." Su Yiqin lightly pressed down on Wang Chong's body. "You're still extremely weak and need to rest. You shouldn't move around carelessly." "Qishi." Wang Chong froze, his body pausing as if he had thought of something. After a long while, he fell into a deep silence. "Qichin, how long have I been unconscious?" Su Yiqin's body trembled, and after a few moments of hesitation, she finally spoke. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." The room fell deathly still as Su Yiqin spoke, and Wang Chong sat there motionlessly. Wang Chong had never imagined that 3 days would have passed in the time he had been unconscious. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Su Yiqin's heart ached as she looked at Wang Chong's silent figure. She already knew everything, and only those who knew how much Wang Chong had sacrificed could understand what Wang Chong was currently feeling. Several months of bitter battle had been reduced to nothing in a single night. All the sacrifices had become meaningless, and there was nothing more painful for Wang Chong. But at this moment Su Yiqin said nothing. She deeply understood that what Wang Chong needed right now was no one's comfort, but someone to think calmly. It seemed like only a moment, but it also seemed like countless eons. With a long sigh, Wang Chong finally came back to his senses. The sight of Wang Chong's pale face made Su Yiqin's heart ache, and she subconsciously drew back her hand, intending to give Wang Chong a towel to wipe his face. But before Su Yiqin could draw back her hand, she felt a cold sensation on her arm, and a moment later, her slender wrist was tightly gripped. "Qichin, you've gotten thinner." Wang Chong's familiar voice rang out in her ear, but this voice made Su Yiqin's eyes ache. "I'm fine." Su Yiqin did her utmost to speak in a calm tone. She had originally believed that Wang Chong would be most concerned about Karasin upon waking up, but she had not expected Wang Chong to ask about her. This made Su Yiqin feel warm, but it also made her feel even more uncomfortable. She was well aware that the calmer and more composed Wang Chong appeared, the more uncomfortable he felt. "Qichin, there's no need to worry about me." Wang Chong gazed at the woman before him, and extended a hand to gently caress Su Yiqin's thin cheek. It had been a month since he had set out from Qishi, completely immersed in this war for the fate of the nation with Arabia. Only now did Wang Chong suddenly realize that he had neglected the person behind him. Wang Chong's actions had completely taken Su Yiqin by surprise. Finally, Su Yiqin's sickly face blushed and she lowered her head. "What are you doing?" Chapter 1240. The young Marquis has already rested for 3 days and 3 nights. It's about time for him to go. A very rude voice came from outside the room, apparently intent on barging into Wang Chong's room. "You bastards, Marquis is unconscious. You clearly know this, yet you still disturb him. Let me tell you, if anyone dares to touch Marquis, I'll take your life." Clanging sounds could be heard from outside the room, apparently coming from Chen Bin and Su Qi, who had unsheathed their weapons in agitation. "Impudent! We're imperial envoys. You dare to attack us. The young Marquis has just been made king of foreign lands, and you already want to rebel." Another group of people angrily bellowed from outside the room, apparently also unsheathing their weapons. Wang Chong recognized these people as the officials and guards of the Bureau of Rights. Bastard! Su Qi, Chen Bin, and the others were even more infuriated by this sight. Just when the two sides were about to clash. "Stop!" A furious and dignified roar came from within the room. Outside the room, under a blossoming plum blossom tree, the two groups of people who were in a stalemate suddenly stopped and looked in the direction of the voice. Creak! The door opened, and Wang Chong walked out, his face pale. His aura was in disarray, and he appeared extremely weak, but his movements exuded a dignified and noble aura that no ordinary person could possess. "Milord, Your Highness," Chen Bin, Su Qi, and the others were delighted to see Wang Chong awake, and they immediately put away their weapons. At almost the same time, the red-robed officials and guards of the Bureau of Rights also showed apprehension in their eyes. The leading official from the Bureau of Rights shot a glance at his subordinates, upon which they swiftly sheathed their weapons. A man's reputation was like a tree's shadow, and the news that Wang Chong had killed the Arab war god Qutayba had long ago spread throughout the Tang dynasty. If they really did fight, no one here would be a match for him, which was why the officials of the Bureau of Rights had exercised so much restraint. "Young Marquis, look at your subordinates." Before the leading official from the Bureau of Rights could say anything, another official from the Bureau of Rights suddenly stepped forward and pointed a finger at Wang Chong as he harshly rebuked. "Wang Chong, do you have any idea what you're doing?" However, before he could finish speaking, Peng, a majestic force, like an ocean wave, sent the guard leader of the Ministry of Rights flying with a bang, and he fiercely smashed onto the ground, unable to get up. Clang! In an instant, the expressions of all the accompanying guards from the Ministry of Rights changed drastically. Almost instinctively, they drew their swords and sabers and pointed them at Wang Chong. "Stop!" Before Wang Chong could speak, the leading official from the Ministry of Rights shouted angrily and reprimanded the crowd. "You bastards! Without my order, no one dares to move." The leading official from the Ministry of Rights glared fiercely at the guard leader, who had made a move, his heart filled with hatred. This idiot! He had completely forgotten what he had told him on the way here. He had long ago warned them not to move in front of Wang Chong. It was one thing for Wang Chong to bully his subordinates while he was unconscious, but now that the other party was awake, if they still dared to act so rashly, they were seeking death. "Your Highness!" The leading official suddenly stepped forward and changed the way he addressed Wang Chong, his tone much gentler. "It's not that we're going too far, but that this is an order from the imperial court. We are just civil officials, and we are only following orders. We hope that Marquis can cooperate and not make things difficult for us minor figures." The leading official bowed, his hands at his side, his expression extremely respectful. The incident at Khorasan had already spread throughout the world, and everyone knew that the young Marquis was a hot potato. No one dared to provoke him at a time like this. Wang Chong said nothing, only calmly stared at the leading official, his eyes so sharp that they seemed to pierce into the depths of the official's mind and see all his secrets. In an instant, the leading official from the Ministry of Rights broke out in a cold sweat, his face turning pale. He had a feeling that from start to finish, Wang Chong had understood all their tricks. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop, and the atmosphere was oppressive to the extreme. After some time, he finally heard Wang Chong's voice. "I understand," Wang Chong indifferently said, and then he quickly turned around and returned to his room. "Chen Bin Suki, get ready. We're leaving for the capital." "Yes." Everyone bowed, and the officials from the Bureau of Rights breathed a long sigh of relief at this voice. Several hours later, Wang Chong boarded a carriage that had been specially prepared for him. Next to him was the still ill Su Yiqin, while Chen Bin, Su Kui, and the others closely guarded the carriage on their war horses. "Qi, you know that there's no need for you to travel with me in your current state. Moreover, this trip to the capital won't be very peaceful. Wang Chong said to Su Yiqin. On this trip to the capital, Wang Chong had not expected Su Yiqin to be so determined to stay by his side. "I've been here long enough." Su Yiqin opened the curtain and glanced at the Qixi Protectorate headquarters, a complicated look in her eyes. While Wang Chong had been fighting at Talas, she had been presiding over Qixi residence, never taking a single step out of it. But everything would eventually come to an end. In addition, they've already taken over the Qixi Protectorate, and you're no longer Qixi Protector General. There's no point in me staying here, and it's time for me to go. After a few moments of silence, Wang Chong finally nodded. "Zhang Ke, let's go." Crack! A whip cracked through the air as Zhang Ke, who was seated at the front of the carriage, shook the reins. As the carriage rumbled along, the group quickly set off toward the southeast. Follow. At almost the same time, the accompanying officials from the Bureau of Rights and the Golden Guards of the Imperial Court urged their horses to follow. Unknowingly, several days passed by. "Marquis, the city of steel is up ahead." A voice suddenly rang out in his ear, and then like some sort of curse, the entire convoy, including the carriage, came to a halt. In the carriage, Wang Chong was also stunned. He almost subconsciously raised the curtain and looked into the distance, where he saw a majestic city forged from steel. The city was bustling with noise, and it looked very lively. This city was built by him in the Gobi Desert. This was the beginning of his entire westward journey, and in the end, he still returned to this place. "Marquis, should we go over and take a look?" A soldier rode over and asked. "There's no need." Wang Chong let down the curtain, mentally sighed, and continued onward. Around 3 days after traveling east from the city of steel, they entered the territory of Longxi, and 10 some days after entering Longxi, they would reach the capital. Reporting. Not long after they entered Longxi's territory, a horseman suddenly galloped over. Behind them, a thick cloud of smoke roiled. "My lord, there's an army up ahead blocking our path. It seems to be coming for us." "Who goes there?" Su Yiqin said in surprise, her brows slightly creasing. The Tang dynasty had reached an agreement with Arabia to withdraw its soldiers from Khorasan, and Wang Chong had been summoned back to the capital. The entire world knew of this matter. Su Yiqin did not understand who would be blocking Wang Chong's path at a time like this. "I don't know. They're not wearing armor, so it's impossible to tell." The horseman lowered his head and respectfully said. On the carriage, Su Yiqin was confused, and around her, Chen Bin Su Kai, and the others were also looking ahead with clear hostility in their eyes. "Qichin, wait a moment for me." At this moment, an extremely calm voice rang out. Wang Chong, who had been sitting with his eyes closed, stood up from his seat. Pushing open the door, Wang Chong stepped out of the carriage. "Put away your weapons. They're not hostile. It's an old friend," Wang Chong indifferently said, as if he had long ago guessed who this person was. The road was quiet, and the only thing that could be seen was the faint rays of the sun reflecting off the dust in the wind. Wang Chong disembarked from the carriage, and with a light wave of his sleeve he slowly walked forward. His steps were unhurried and unhurried, as if he was meeting with an old friend. Chen Bin Suki, "My lord's situation isn't good. Should we go and protect him?" Zhang Ke uneasily turned his head to Suki and the others. "There's no need," Suki said after a long period of silence. "Zhang Ke, I am no less worried than you, But no matter the time, I have always believed in Marquis, and I also believe in Marquis's judgment and decisions. Since Marquis doesn't feel that they're hostile, this must be the case. Zhang Ke froze for a moment, and then he finally fell silent. The road was quiet, with only the faint sound of Wang Chong's footsteps. As he walked along the road and around a corner, Wang Chong finally saw the army that the scout had spoken of. There were 10-some people on the other side, all of them dressed in cloth. At a glance, they didn't seem to be soldiers, but the halberds in their hands, their ramrod-straight bodies, and the iron-blooded temperament they exuded proved that they were truly soldiers, and the elite sort at that. All of these people were guarding a middle-aged man in a gray robe who stood ramrod straight in the middle. The middle-aged man's long hair was loose, and his back was to Wang Chong, his expression relaxed and content. At his side was a small square table, and on the table was an exquisite long-necked white porcelain bottle. Next to the bottle were 2 small white porcelain wine cups. The middle-aged man lifted the white porcelain bottle, poured himself a cup, and then carefully sipped from it. His movements were elegant and calm, exuding a noble aura. It gave Wang Chong the feeling that he was a swordsman brandishing his sword. This sort of demeanor was like that of a high mountain, one that left one in awe. Wang Chong had seen many people, but there were very few who could compare to this person in this aspect. Lord Wang. A mellow and warm voice came from the road. Hearing the footsteps behind him, the gray-robed man finally turned his head. At that moment, Wang Chong could clearly see that the gray-robed man before him was elegant and handsome. He had a long beard on his chin, and his handsomeness was not one bit inferior to that of the beautiful war god, Go Xianji. In terms of elegance, he even surpassed Go Xianji. More importantly, this person had deep eyes and a high nose, and his body bore the strong mark of the Hu. And even though he was doing his utmost to restrain his aura, it was impossible to conceal that majestic aura from Wang Chong's eyes. Wang Chong didn't remember seeing this person before, but Wang Chong immediately recognized him. Geshu Han. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.